The Indy cars are ready for their longest and most difficult day, the Michigan 500. It's a 2-mile high-bank super speedway, Michigan International Speedway, in an area called the Irish Hills of southern Michigan, about 70 miles west of Detroit. And a surprise here. This is the pole sitter, Parker Johnstone. His first pole, his first oval on Firestone tires and with a Honda engine. A lot of history.
God smiled on us today. We had some problems earlier in the week, and when it had to come right, the guys of the Comtech Racing crew did their job 100% when they had to, came through in the clutch, and we'd like to thank everyone at Renard, Firestone, and especially Motorola and Honda for making this all possible.
Starting alongside is Teo Fabi from Milan, who is not as quick, but has had a car that has been very consistent all week long. On the outside of this front row of three is Michael Andretti, who is still having trouble converting high speed into IndyCar victories. Now, Robbie Gordon will not be racing today. On Friday, during the practice, he was involved in an accident in turn 4. He was unconscious. They took him to the hospital. He came back to the track with a note saying that he could drive, but the IndyCar officials have a rule that requires 7 days of delay from a head injury until you can drive again. So Robbie Gordon will sit as a spectator for today's Michigan 500.
Well, I physically feel okay. You know, I did hit pretty hard yesterday, and it knocked me out. And there's a rule in kart that says if you get knocked out, you're not able to come back and race. It's unfortunate. I think that we're okay to race. You know, I did have another car that the Valvoline crew had put together that we could have raced, but a rule's a rule, and they're going to stand by it.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's go 1 week back to the race at Cleveland, Guy Hobbs, which was full of action and controversy.
And a lot of action before the green flag even fell, as Paul Tracy and Andre Ribeiro got tangled up, but Gilles de Ferran had a great start from the pole position to take the early lead.
In fact, de Ferran led most of the early going. Here is that situation before the green flag. As Paul Tracy was cut off by Andre Ribeiro, he was able to get restarted.
Robbie Gordon's day was full of controversy at Cleveland. In fact, ended up getting a $10,000 fine and put on probation at the end of the day. Paul Tracy, having rejoined the race, had another spin and decided to call it quits in his Newman-Haas entry.
Later in the race, it was Gordon and Jacques Villeneuve as they battled wheel to wheel, and both went off the course, but both were able to continue on.
Under another restart with the yellow flag situation, Gordon jumped out into the lead. De Ferran and Michael Andretti following through, and Scott Pruitt getting tangled up in it, although he was 2 laps down.
And it was this level of close competition all the way to the end. Then de Ferran, trying to overhaul Scott Pruitt, got pinched off, out of the race, and out of the win. Gilles was not happy.
He was going to be 3 laps down, and unfortunately he felt that he had the right to fight for the corner with me and put me in a very difficult position, and we both went out of the race. It was a real shame because the car was running well, as I said, and as far as I was concerned, that was the best chance we had so far this year to win a race.
But the action was not nearly over as Brian Herta picked up the lead. Then he faltered, and Michael came around, but then Jacques Villeneuve came around Michael, and now he was the leader in the closing lap. But Michael Andretti still would not give up. As he closed on the corner with Jacques Villeneuve, they touched. Villeneuve now pulled steadily away, and Michael's race was effectively over.
3 of us went flying down into turn 1 just as late as we could brake because it was all for the race, and I hit Jacques, and I went flying, and it bent my steering, and that was the end of the race.
It was Jacques Villeneuve's race as he continued to lengthen his points lead. But even after the race, there was controversy. Robbie Gordon slammed into the side of Michael Andretti. But today it's the Michigan 500 and a track of a different type. A high bank 2-mile super speedway, wide, fast, and recently repaved. But in the past, this track has been incredibly bumpy, and that has led to races of attrition. Let's go back 2 years. 1993, Mario Andretti on the pole with a track record that still stands today, but his Newman Haas teammate Nigel Mansell roared past to pick up the lead. Then Stefan Johansson got into the wall, and that began to signal the attrition that is so common here.
Well, it's obviously a lot more variables that come into it than in a normal 200-miler, let's say. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, of course, you need to have the reliability, you know, which is always the biggest problem, it seems like, especially around Michigan. It's very hard on engines because you're running flat out the whole time. You know, the throttle's just wide open the whole race, pretty much. You know.
During a pit stop, Mario Andretti put on a great show.
Certainly entertained the crowd with this loop-the-loop right here in front of his teammate Nigel Mansell. Managed to continue without losing too much time as he went on to finish second.
And then at the finish, it was Nigel Mansell taking his first victory on a high-speed, high-bank super speedway. It was a great day for Carl Haas and Paul Newman. 1 year later, Nigel Mansell had the pole.
Trying to defend his title here at Michigan, off to a great start, but then there was some more drama as the attrition came in with Michael Andretti. Big contact with the outside retaining wall.
This was not the end, as Adrian Fernandez had a fire in the pits, and with the help of the Newman Haas team, they were able to douse him with water and put the flames out. Raul Boesel led for 170 laps of this race. And then suddenly his day was over, and Dick Simon, his owner, was devastated.
Alonso Jr. went on to take the lead, but he too ran into troubles late on in the race.
Now both of the Penske cars were out of the fight. And that left the checkered flags for Scott Goodyear, his second win at Michigan. The question now is who will see these checkered flags here today. This season for the Indy cars has been amazingly competitive. We'll take you back to the start of the season when it was young Jacques Villeneuve driving for Team Green that took the very first victory.
And then in Australia, Paul Tracy scored his first victory for the Newman Haas team.
And then back to the United States, Robbie Gordon scores his first career victory at Phoenix.
On to Long Beach, where Alonso Jr. has dominated and continued to in 1995.
From there, it was on to Nazareth, where another Penske car picked up the win with Emerson Fittipaldi driving.
Jacques Villeneuve, though, came through to win the big one, the Indianapolis 500 in May, his first victory there.
And then 1 week later at Milwaukee, the second win of the season for Paul Tracy.
In Ford's hometown of Detroit, Robbie Gordon scored his second victory, getting all the points from the pole and leading the most laps.
It was back across the country to Portland, where Alonso Jr. was disqualified and Jimmy Vasser given the win.
Elkhart Lake, Jacques Villeneuve repeated as a winner there, winning there in 1994.
At Toronto, Michael Andretti finally put his name in the winner's column.
And then just 1 week ago, Jacques Villeneuve clinched his fourth win of the season in 1995.
And so what does that do to the points? Well, Jack leads it over Bobby Rahal. Robbie Gordon will go pointless today and will effectively fall out of the points fight. But there are still 110 points left in the season, and it's still anybody's cup.
Welcome back to Michigan International Speedway for round 13 of the 1995 PPG IndyCar Racing Series. Very hot here, and the IndyCar Series is very hot right now, one of the most competitive we've seen in years. But one of the problems this year is the Indy Racing League, the IRL, set up by Tony George. He is trying to form an all-oval racing series at a less expense for the drivers. Here you can see what some of the fans' reaction is to that IRL. Their first race is scheduled for January down in Florida, a new oval being built at Walt Disney World in Orlando. They're going to run just ovals and try and keep it an American field, driving field, so that the guys coming up through the smaller off-track and the smaller half-mile ovals in the Midwest can get up into Indy, and of course they will get guaranteed 25 starting spots at the Indianapolis 500 in 1996. Here's some of the reaction from the drivers, Andrew Craig and Gordon Kirby, to the IRL.
Point of view, which he felt was correct and was appropriate. Quite frankly, we believe he's wrong. We do not believe the concerns he expressed are valid. Like any sport, we can improve, and we'd love to work constructively with Tony to find a resolution and to make our sport better, but we've no intention of lying down and going away.
The Indy 500 is the most important event of the year, and it also happens to be the crown jewel to the IRL, so it would lead me to believe that I probably will be doing the IRL because of that. I think this series is very strong, and I think there's a lot of room for both series. And what Tony George is trying to do by focusing more on ovals has its sense.
As a driver, I hope they find a way that you know, we keep this series and of course participate in the Indy 500, because no doubt is one of the biggest races in the world.
As a whole, I'll certainly speak for my own opinion and for the opinion of the readership that I have, both in Racer Magazine and Autosport around the world. And really, it's incredulity, I would say. People simply don't understand why there is a need for such a series at this stage of the game. In fact, the vast majority of the fans that I speak to are disgusted by Tony George's plans to begin this series. They feel that the IndyCar series is more competitive, more attractive than ever, and they simply do not understand. In fact, there's a large number of fans that are voicing a great deal of disgust to me. I could go on, I suppose, at length, but I don't want to be particularly salacious to Tony George. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway and Indy 500 is a highly respected event around the world, but I'm afraid that he's doing considerable damage to that event.
Well, I just hope that this political issue be solved. Everybody's going to lose if we split. It's going to damage the sport. It's going to be difficult for the driver, for the sponsor, for the car owners, for the public. And I hope we can come to an agreement and work together. It's IndyCar races at the best now.
The Michigan 500 is almost set and ready to go. We'll have 3 pace laps here. I'm Guy Hobbs with this ESPN presentation of round 13 of the 1995 PPG IndyCar World Stories. Just to remind you once again, Robbie Gordon, currently 3rd in the championship, will not be racing here today. He had a crash on Friday. They estimate that he hit the wall and an impact of 114 Gs. He was rushed to hospital. He was cleared overnight. He came back to the track and said, oh, if I can't race, I'm going home. So he's gone back to California, where he'll be watching this one, but of course obviously going to have a big effect on his championship. This man, of course, leading the points championship with 138 points, the Canadian Jacques Villeneuve, coming off a win just last weekend in Cleveland. Maybe a win that he lucked into, but a win nonetheless. Didn't have a great qualifying run. At the moment, he is sitting on the inside of row 3. The story here in Michigan, though, is the Reynards and the Ford motors are quick, but the quickest motor of all in their first pole position, the Honda engine of Parker Johnston. And this is his first ever oval event, so great run for Parker Johnston. He's been with Honda for 11 years. He won 3 IMSA Light Championships in the Acura powered car, and now he's sitting on the pole here at Michigan. A great race debut for him here at the 2-mile oval. 500 miles today, 250 laps, probably 6 or 7 pit stops. Joining us today, Paul Page, Sam Posey, and Bobby Unser in the booth. Gary Gerould and Jack Arute in the pits.
Well, the grandstands are full, the engines are started, and we're very close to the green flag in the Michigan 500. So let's take a look at the starting field. On the pole is Parker Johnstone. In only his 10th start, the rookie qualified nearly 2 miles an hour faster than the field. In the center of the row, Teo Fabi. 2 of his career wins have come on ovals. And on the outside is Michael Andretti. He's the only 2-time winner in today's field. In the second row, Jacques Villeneuve. He won last week at Cleveland, and in the only other 500-mile race this year at Indy. The center is Jimmy Vasser, the Portland winner, making his 2nd start here at Michigan. Outside is Mauricio Guzman, Big Mo. He was leading at the halfway point at the Indy 500. In row 3, it's Brian Herta, coming off a career-best 2nd-place finish last week at Cleveland. Paul Tracy is in the center of the 3rd row. One of his 2 wins this year came on the oval at Milwaukee. Outside is Danny Sullivan, the winner here in 1988. In the 4th row, Andre Ribeiro. He's running the same Honda engine that sits on the pole. In the center is Adrian Fernandez, who has scored points in the last 6 races in a row. And outside is Scott Pruitt. The last win for Firestone Tires came here in 1974, and Pruitt's racing on him. In row 5, Al Unser Jr., the winner of the fastest 500-mile race ever here in 1990. In the center is Raul Boesel and Gilles de Ferran. In row 6, Bobby Rahal, Emerson Fittipaldi, who scored his first IndyCar victory here 10 years ago, and outside is Eddie Cheever. In the 7th row, Carlos Guerrero, Buddy Lazier, and Stefan Johansson. In row 8, Lynn St. James, away from her announcer duties, back behind the wheel. Eliseo Salazar is in the center of the row, and outside is Alessandro Zampedri. In the 9th row, 2 cars, Christian Fittipaldi and Hiro Matsushita. We already mentioned to you that Robbie Gordon's car has been withdrawn. He will not start here today. So on the line, 250 laps, 5 miles, a 2-mile high bank speedway. Fuel stops come about every 34 laps or so. And in the Nations Cup battle, the United States continues to dominate over Canada and Brazil. And that one will go down to the end of the year, no question about that. In today's field, mostly Renards. There's the engines and the tires. And in the Manufacturers' Championship now, Ford Cosworth still pulling ahead of Mercedes-Benz. Now the crowd on their feet, waving them on. Let's go pit side before the start in Jackaroo.
Well, Paul, just about 4 hours ago, Rick Mears, the multi-500-mile champion who has since retired from IndyCar competition, moseyed over to Parker Johnstone's pit area and had a half-hour conversation with Parker Johnstone. The whole conversation centered upon 2 things: how to start this race and how to stay out of trouble. Afterwards, Parker Johnstone said, "I believe I've got exactly the advice that I need." Gary?
We're in Parker Johnstone's pit, and the crew has just learned from engineers who monitor track temperatures 138 degrees as we await the start of this race. That's the surface temperature of this 2-mile oval. We've talked about the stresses, the loads on the suspension of these cars in the past. The bumps are gone. It's going to be sensational racing, but it is so very, very hot. You wonder what toll that may take on equipment and driver before this afternoon is over.
And right there is just the perfect picture to show you how beautifully smooth this repaved track is. The drivers say it's like glass, as Bobby Unser suggested, and that could make for one incredibly fast race. The fastest 500 ever was run here. Will it be faster here today? Take a look at a couple of the onboards we've got for you. This is for Michael Andretti. He'll start outside the front row. Paul Tracy is a bit back in the field in 8th starting position. And Bobby Rahal, of course, we have that camera mounted right on the nose of his car, starts back in 16th position. And Stefan Johansson a little further back in 21st. Again, the camera is right there on the nose of the car. Brian Herta's car. Now we've got a good set of cameras on his car as well. And then Scott Pruitt. So plenty of onboard cameras to show you here today. Should make for one exciting afternoon. Remember, the onboard cameras last year captured the tire exploding on Robbie Gordon's car live right as it was happening. Those onboard cameras are terrific. Look at the crowd, just gigantic here today. In the pits, the teams are all ready as they are now on the pace lap. And Bobby, the heat here today, heard it mentioned several times, it'll affect the drivers, but it'll affect those machines much, much more. What about the tires with that surface temperature?
Paul, that's what I was just poking you for. I wanted to tell you the tires are going to take the most views of everything today, other than the guys in the pit. The tires, remember, it's the sun shining on the track. That's what causes the top surface to get really hot, and that's the part that affects the tires.
All right, it's rows of 3 here for the Michigan 500. Pole sitter, rookie, first time on an oval, Parker Johnstone. Awesome responsibility, but he is a veteran racer, and everyone seems to have good confidence in him. The pace picks up as they come off of turn 4. We watch for the green flag. Parker lags back just a bit, and it's a non-start. They'll start counting laps. But what they're really looking for is to see the pole sitter cross the line first, and Jacques Villeneuve looked like he was cruising right up there.
Yeah, Villeneuve was sneaking up on that. Now, they'll only let him do this the next time. If he does that again, they'll just put him to the back of the pack. So they'll be watching for that. Wally Dallenbach, that's not too far from us here, looking at the same thing we are.
Jim Swintal, the starter for the IndyCars, very conscientious about those starts. Has a long conversation with the front row, tells him where he will most likely go green and what he would like to see the alignment. And one thing is he always wants to see that pole car head for the line first.
Another thing to realize is it's not important who leads the first turn of the first lap of this. This really is a long race at 500 miles.
All right, off the fourth turn again. Will they start him this time? Still straggled a bit, but at least Parker Johnstone is out in front. But
no,
says, no, not
Fabi
like that.
What was Fabi doing down there?
Well, Sam, that was that Johnstone just really jumped it. Now I thought maybe he hadn't done right before. Remember, this is the first time that he's ever been on an oval or on the pole.
But why Bobby did Fabi, and you'll see it here.
Because he was way ahead of him. And why not get behind? If they do throw the green, he needs to pick up a draft so he can stay with him so the other guys don't pass him, you see?
Now remember, because of fuel, these laps under the yellow do in fact count. So if we get green this time, it'll actually be at the conclusion of the second lap. I'm not so sure, Bobby, you can really hang that on Parker when other guys are maneuvering quite the way they are. Here we come. Turn number 4, the move again. Front row kind of a line, and again Teo Fabi drops down, but this time it's going to go green. And here we go, 4, 5 wide into the first turn. Parker Johnstone leads them through one. Teo Fabi runs up high. Michael Andretti drops into third. Villeneuve fourth. Jimmy Vasser is fifth. They're still spread out fairly wide coming onto the backstretch.
Remember, there goes Fabi down the inside trying Parker Johnstone. Remember that most of the practice laps here have been done with the cars running by themselves. This is the first time they've been bunched together, Paul.
Coming for the line, Parker Johnstone leads the first lap of racing. He'll be scored with 3 laps into the record book. Teo Fabi in second place, then Michael, then Jacques Villeneuve, then Jimmy Vasser. Mauricio Gugelmin is sixth, followed by Paul Tracy, Brian Herter, Andrew Ribeiro, and Danny Sullivan.
Now, the important thing for all of these guys, what they're doing right now is trying to see what will win. They've never had this many cars, as you mentioned, on the track at one time. So they're trying to see how the drafting and how the guys alongside them are affecting their race cars.
Right now, there is no prevailing breeze. You can see the trees at the top of the screen. Everything is dead calm.
Jimmy Vasser runs in fifth place, chasing Jacques Villeneuve. They've strung out as they all start to look for racing room. And I think Bobby trying to find out what kind of grooves are available out there.
Yes, and they're going to find out that this track, being all new, the groove is wherever you want it to be. As we saw in the IROC race yesterday, you can just run on the bottom or you can run on the top. And that's what these guys are going to figure out by the time they run 500 miles. As we saw Parker Johnstone a little while ago, he was absolutely right down on the white line and still was leading.
Looking back now to the battle, 4th, 5th, and 6th. Villeneuve, Vasser, Paul Tracy. Tracy closing up on Vasser.
You see Villeneuve there in the blue car just coming by. It's not unusual for him not to lead. Remember, he has a commanding lead in the championship, but he rarely leads the races from the beginning. He has a very cautious approach to the first laps.
Paul Tracy on the charge, closing on Jimmy Vasser.
It's amazing, Paul. I talked to a lot of the drivers the last couple of days and the team owners, and they realize that often there are not very many cars finished.
Whoa, car into the wall. That's Carlos Guerrero. So we're yellow. By the way, Eliseo Salazar jumped up 5 positions in the first couple of laps.
And by the way, look at the extent of the damage. This track, when it strikes big. That car's torn up bad.
Keeping an eye on Guerrero to make sure he is all right as well. Fairly still in the cockpit as Parker Johnstone slows down and comes by. The IndyCar safety crews are already there, each a specialist in either extrication or medical or fire.
He obviously went into the turn backwards. Somehow or another, there was a spin. You can see that's the left side. Took all the brunt of the damage. The tire and the wheel suspension. That piece on the right is the right rear hub assembly. The uprights and all of that together, separated from the wheel.
And he's okay. There's some good, well, he's at least capable of climbing out.
Which Robbie Gordon 2 days ago was not. So it's good to see movement.
So as Carlos Guerrero steps over the debris of his wrecked race car, one Lola is junk right now, and we have our first racing yellow of the day on lap 6.
Under our first caution period of the day at the Michigan International Speedway with 6 of the 250 laps complete, the yellow flag is for Carlos Guerrero, had heavy contact with the wall but was able to climb out of the car no problem. Firestone tires, there you see what their wet weather tire looks like. They're slick, doing a great job here at Michigan. And we need to point out, not only is it Honda's first pole, but this is Firestone's first pole since 1974 and that pole came at Phoenix with Al Unser at the wheel. Their last victory also came back in 1974, and that was also with Al Unser and right here at Michigan. So Firestone looking to get their first win in 21 years. They have a great aerial shot from the Goodyear blimp of the 2-mile tri-oval owned by Roger Penske here in the Irish Hills of Michigan. A beautiful area. Andre Ribeiro, the Brazilian, first time on a super speedway oval, or this particular super speedway oval for him, and he spent the day in practice, he said, following the good and experienced guys such as Michael Andretti. We saw speeds from that car all the way up to 232 miles per hour, but that was when they were in a tow. There you see his team owner and manager, Steve Horn, the Horn Tasman racing car. That's also with the Honda Power, the Firestone tires, and the Reynard chassis with a rookie driver. And they've actually had a great year so far, although not put in some of the results they would have liked, but they've been very quick everywhere they go. That Honda engine revs up to 14,000 RPM, although they've slowed it down here in Michigan. Just to remind you, the rules have changed slightly as we now ride on board with Brian Herter. Here at Michigan, because they repaved the track, they said speeds were going to be way too quick. So to slow the cars down, they reduced the boost from the pop-off valve. It's now only 40 inches as opposed to 45 inches, and they also reduced the wing sizes, and now these guys are running the super speedway package that they run at Indianapolis, and basically the rear wing is obsolete. I spoke to the Pac West team, and they told me they're running a 5-degree rear wing angle. The minimum you can run is 4 degree, and they put that 1 degree in just for the heck of it. They said, in fact, it's not doing anything. So these cars are really got the speeds back up with this new pavement, even with the lack of boost. But running, what they're doing is running more of a draft, a NASCAR style. There you see Mauricio Guzman in that Pac West entry, in his rear wing. You can see absolutely flat, nothing to it. Also, the Pac West team is running a new motor this weekend, not the Series 2 Ford motor, but they have a development on it that gives them more pressure on the fuel injection system, which gets it more atmospheric, and they can get better fuel economy and a better run from that motor. So we expect to see good things from them today, and particularly Mauricio Guzman. He loves these super speedways. Don't forget, he led the most laps at Indianapolis this year and was leading at the halfway point before falling into troubles later on. But Guzman settled straight in here at Michigan. It's the second time here for him. Not a good run last year, and he seems to be really enjoying this new super speedway surface. There you can see the lines where they put down the surface. They did that in March this year. They've had one race so far on it. The NASCAR Winston Cup guys were here early in the year. They will return again later. And yesterday, actually, we had a very exciting IROC, International Racer Championship race here, which Al Unser Jr. went on to win, and Scott Pruitt also raced it. The Mexican Adrian Fernandez running in the Tecate Quaker State Gallus entry. He has scored points in the last 6 races and suddenly looking fairly good. Don't forget, last year, though, he went out with that fire in the pit stop area, and he was in flames. The car was in flames. Luckily, everybody got out without any burns or any serious injuries, but obviously looking for better things here this weekend. We are under yellow, as a reminder, as Carlos Carrero, the fellow Mexican to Adrian Fernandez, had fairly heavy contact with the wall and ripped the car up. An expensive weekend once again for Dick Simon. In the pits right now, Alessandro Zampedri has come in, and we also saw another couple of cars pull in quickly as we now show you another one of our onboard cameras, this also riding with Adrian Fernandez. There's Zampedri. They're listing him as a rookie here. If you remember last year, he ran, but in practice, he also had major contact with the wall and never actually competed in the race. Stefan Johansson has also pulled in the pits and made an early stop, maybe just for a splash of fuel, maybe to make a few aerodynamic changes. These cars, as Paul Page pointed out, have been running in single file or single, especially in qualifying, and not been running in a chain, and there was some argument as to whether there would be a good groove here, and the drafting was going to be a major thing, and we're going to see speeds up to 231 miles per hour during the race. So it's going to be a very fast, very exciting, and as Emerson Fittipaldi put it yesterday, it's going to be one of the most, one of the races you have to be thinking about the most as far as mirrors and things going on ahead of you. Adrian Fernandez continues to lead or follow the pack around as Parker Johnson leads. Fabi is second. Michael Andretti is third. Jacques Villeneuve has not pit stopped in fourth. We also have Jimmy Vasser, Paul Tracy, Mauricio Guzman, Andre Ribeiro out, and Brian Herter. And right in front behind them is this car, Adrian Fernandez, and he is being followed right now by Scott Pruitt, then Al Unser Jr. and Raul Boesel. Raul Boesel still looking for his first IndyCar win. he could be a threat here. The Reynards and the Ford engine seem to be the quick combination, along with those Firestone tires. And that Honda engine, if they can get it to last as they did at India, if you remember, Scott Goodyear led most of that race and then looked like he had taken the victory, but was given a black flag penalty for overtaking the pace car. Scott Goodyear not here this weekend, but Andre Ribeiro and Parker Johnston representing Honda. Riding down the back straight with Fernandez, very flat the back straight. The banking here is about 18 degrees in turns 3 and 4, and through the tri-oval section in front of the main grandstand, where we have a near capacity crowd here at the Roger Penske-owned Michigan International Speedway. Lyn St. James is racing this weekend, but back up in the booth is Bobby Unser, Sam Posey, and Paul Page. In the pit lane today, Jack Arute and Gary Gerould. Let's go back up to them for more coverage of the Michigan 500 presented by Speedstick.
So still yellow here. So we've got some time. Let's go down to Gary Gerould.
Paul, you mentioned at the head of the show there was a very serious incident involving Robbie Gordon on Friday in practice when a failure in a suspension part in the left rear sent him into the wall. A tremendous hit, left him unconscious for several minutes. He, of course, out of the hospital doing well. But because of that accident, it was determined that it was a failure of a part in the suspension. It was on a Reynard chassis, and so Bruce Ashmore and the designers at Reynard immediately tried to make a fix. This is the lower wishbone. This is the piece that was in question. It takes a tremendous stress here at 230-mile-per-hour speeds on these banks. They cut this piece out. They had a local manufacturer then make this bushing and this top piece here that is 90-ton steel as opposed to 50-ton steel that was used before. Greatly strengthened it. And as you can see, there are threads here. Instead of it being welded in, they now bolt this into this particular bushing, weld the bushing to a tube that runs all the way down with spot welds all the way down through this particular arm. It's on the lower left, and you say, why does it absorb all of the tension and the stress when the car leans to the right? Well, as it leans to the right, it pulls on that left side. And at these tremendous downforce and tremendous speeds, you have all of this stress that led to the failure. It was a high mileage part. It had 1,700 miles. So they made the fix. A couple of the drivers have that in their cars today. Other people have entirely new pieces trying to preclude what happened to Robbie Gordon. Jack?
Gary, let's try while we've got the luxury of some time for IndyCar Engineering for Dummies. Now, here's an Indy car without any of its rear wings or front wings. You see the large tires up front here. Well, these large tires, they create an excessive amount of drag. Believe it or not, the drag coefficient on many of the American passenger cars is far less than what is on an Indy car. So now when you're hurtling at speeds of over 220 miles an hour, engineers have to try and adjust the downforce on the car. The more downforce that's created by the front wings and the rear wings, the more drag that it's created and the less speed that you're able to get for the amount of horsepower you have. So what engineers do is they run a knife edge balance. They try to take as much downforce out of the car before a driver can no longer drive it. Why? Because they want the top speed. So when you hear a driver talking about his car being balanced, that means for that particular track, he's got it exactly the way he wants it. The coefficient between downforce and speed is exactly perfect, Paul.
So, with rain tires, no wing, and no nose. Now, I don't think I'd drive that car. They're still trying to clean this track up. We're under yellow after Carlos Guerrero's accident, and we'll be back.
13 of the 250 laps complete, most of those under yellow at this point, as we had two false starts with Parker Johnston, first time ever on the pole, first time on a super speedway, had trouble bringing the field round, but now we are at race, and of course the yellow flag situation right now is for Carlos Guerrero, who went into the wall fairly hard but was able to get himself out of the car and walk off. He will be treated at the Infield Medical Center. Christian Fittipaldi has had a long weekend here, of course his first time here at the super speedway as well, but he has been struggling as in the practice session where Robbie Gordon went off, and then the team owner Derek Walker said, well, we're not going to send Christian out until we've solved the problem, figured out what is wrong, what broke. So Christian had to sit out the practice session, went out in qualifying, and the car wasn't right, so he went out in the second qualifying, which is considered a second day qualifying session. So no matter what speed you record, you end up starting at the back as his crew. There you see him getting the fuel and methanol ready for any pit stop, as he has just been in actually and back out taking on a load of fuel. So he had a bad qualifying run, although speed was good, he had to start at the back. But he is one of the cars, along with Andre Ribeiro in the Tasman entry, a Reynard entry. The Steve Horn pulled that car out of practice until they'd solved that problem, which we just saw Gary Gerald explained a problem with the wishbone that broke on Robbie Gordon's car. Some other differences here at the Michigan International Speedway. We touched on the wings, the downforce. The other things they are allowed here is, of course, Super Speedway wheels. You'll notice the wheel has slightly more aerodynamics to it. They also weigh about 25 pounds less than normal. And obviously they have a lot more fuel allocation for the weekend. And they can run carbon brakes as opposed to steel brakes. And that is one of the things that brings the weight down. Also, they take out things like anti-roll bars because this track is so smooth. They've taken some of those out and they're reducing weight all around the car. About 25 pounds less here than they are at Cleveland just 1 week ago. The running order: Johnston, Fabi, Andretti, Villeneuve is 4th, but the championship leader, Vassar 5th, Tracy, Guzman, Ribeiro in the Honda has moved up from the 11th starting position. Brian Herr to Adrian Fernandez.
Okay, Scott, it's going to be a green flag.
Let's go back to ABC.
Back with just about 1 lap to go before we go back to green flag racing. Parker Johnstone, leading an IndyCar race for the first time in his career, has now led 15 laps, and good moves. Salazar from 23rd to 20th, Eddie Cheever from 18th to 15th, Paul Tracy from 8th up to 6th, and Andre Ribeiro from 10th up to 8th. So in those first couple of laps of speed, we have seen some action. Now, one thing we're going to be able to do is listen in on the two-way communication with Scott Pruitt. You'll be hearing the voices of Scott Pruitt and perhaps a little clearer that of Jim McGee, the team manager for Patrick Racing.
12 o'clock in the fuel, Scott, 12 o'clock.
That was the voice of McGee. And there is Scott Pruitt on the track. He currently runs 11th. Bobby?
I didn't hear that good enough to get that. It's 12 o'clock. I don't know what he meant.
That's the adjustment of the fuel dial. It's probably adjusted straight up.
All right, we're ready to go green once again.
Green.
And that's how they tell. In case they're not looking ahead, Parker Johnstone takes the lead, but take a look at Teo Fabi as he now begins to close in. He's going to try a low move on Parker. Parker comes across the front and pulls away.
And yeah, what I just wanted to tell you that what it means, the reason they say green, 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 because on a restart, as soon as it goes green, I don't care if they're on the back straightaway, they can start passing. And that's really important.
Boy, take a look at Michael, who is on the fly as he just screams past Teo Fabi and picks up 2nd place.
3 different engines, the Honda engine of Parker Johnstone out front, but you just saw the power of the new Ford Cosworth engine in Michael's car breeze by the more normal engine on Fabi's.
Back on Paul Tracy's car right now. He runs 6th, but he begins to challenge Jimmy Vassar just ahead. That blue car, that's Jack Villeneuve.
And let's keep in mind, these cars are like flywheels. It takes a while to get the speed up, and that's the reason you see a passing sometimes.
Oh, look at this. The Honda power of Andre Ribeiro really paying off on the backstretch.
Talk about
it. Just cuts right on past Paul Tracy.
Talk about a difference in engine power. Both Hondas are really moving. Here comes Ribeiro setting up another Ford engine. The Ford engine in Vassar's car. Watch him.
Fernandez, Pruitt, and Al Unser Jr. were all able to get past Herta on the restart, and that brings them up into the top 10. Fernandez still on the move there. Back to the fight, Jimmy Vassar, Andre Ribeiro. Fight for 6th place, Bobby.
The Honda will no doubt have more power than the Fords do. It's been running that and showing that here. But it's not passing as easy. You have to remember, it's a flywheel thing here. In order for everybody to get equal like they are now, it takes about 2 to 3 laps to get this flywheel going in full swing. And it's because they have less boost, less horsepower. The aerodynamics are really what's working more on these cars than the horsepower is.
Looking back at Scott Pruitt as he tries to do everything he can to get up into the front and into this fight.
You can see how wide the grooves are. You know, they don't, everybody was talking about when they first got here that the new track, new pavement rather on it, it was going to be a 1-groove track. Well, already you can see we've seen 3 grooves wide already with almost 25 cars doing it. You can see Scott right now, he's all over the place.
Pruitt working on the Gallus driver, Adrian Fernandez.
Just put yourself for a second in Pruitt's place. the tension. I mean, things seem to be happening in slow motion. Remember, they're going 230 miles an hour. Anything that goes wrong at this speed could be catastrophic.
We'll ride with Scott Pruitt. He is 10th. He makes the move on Adrian Fernandez.
Now what happens there is Adrian was running low, thinking that he was going to block Scott. This racetrack, because of the grooves being so wide. There's
Jack Villeneuve comes off and into the pits.
That's unscheduled, Paul.
Oh, absolutely. 22 laps into the book. This could mean trouble for the points leader.
And he's going too slow. He's got some sort of a problem. He's going way too slow coming in.
Green team is right there, and the IndyCar officials are saying, hold it, we've seen something here.
That's the crew guys saying they found some sort of a problem right there with his hand in the air.
Something in the right rear. Suspension, we're talking to Renard. Wheel bearing, what could this possibly be? But before you answer that, whatever it is, it may speak once again to the toughness of Michigan.
Well, it's definitely in the right rear. Everybody's seeing something right in the right rear. I can see smoke coming back there a little bit too, Paul, so he's probably got a bearing in the upright that's gone.
That would be only his second breakdown in the last 9 races.
Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, we're showing you the rear hub that they're going to pull out and put on the right side of the car, Paul. So definitely this is going to be a long stop for your point leader.
Now there's the upright right there. That's what Jack's referring to as the hub. Now most likely the part that's gone bad is the bearings inside to keep the whole thing together.
Yeah, and Jack Arute, any idea, Jack, on the hub, what might be the problem? Wheel bearing, a connection, what is it?
Well, right now, Paul, they're really not going to discern what the problem is. It's easier just to change it and get him back out there.
The reason, of course, they'll put this work in is this race is notorious as being one where people break down. You could spend 10, 15 laps in the pits right now and still finish in the first 5 at the end of this day.
Another thing you have to worry about, Sam and Paul and Jack, is when they put those things back on, they don't get aligned as good as they were when he started the race.
All right, Michael Andretti, who is 3rd, but he's dropped way back. Listen to that engine. What is that?
A little bit of back off. He backed off just for a minute there, or he could have popped a gear shifter. Remember, they told you they have 2 gears that they race with. One of them to get rolling with that they'll use certainly after the restart, and the other one is what they call the cruise gear, like the overdrive in a car.
Well, I buy the gear change, Bobby, because I don't think he'd have backed off at that point on the track.
Yeah, but look at this. Michael comes off the corner low. That's Paul Tracy closing in on him. And Michael, for the most part, just lets Tracy cruise on past. Are we going to see Michael Andretti in the pits shortly? He's staying out right now.
Here comes Ribeiro there. He's shooting right by him, no effort.
Oh, whatever it is a problem now, no question about it. Look at the difference in his fastest lap at 224 and his last lap at 208.
Yeah, he'll be in pretty quick. He's got a bad problem. He could even have a broken header on it, too.
This team has complained about these new Ford engines, and it looks like one may be letting him down now.
What about Michael, Gary Gerould?
On the radio, he's telling the crew, Paul, that it's something to do with the engine. He says it's very much like what happened at Cleveland. Remember, in the last 12, 13 laps at Cleveland, they traced that after the event to an ignition problem. Michael thinks it's the same. They're waving him into position as he's on pit road.
So on lap 28, Michael Andretti brings an ailing engine into the pits. The team, most notably in the person of Paul Tracy, has been concerned about their Ford engines thus far. And this may be further evidence of that concern. He shut her down. The cowling comes off. It's going to be a long stop for Michael. Parker Johnstone is still the leader, followed by Teo Fabi. And with Michael's turn into the pits, Paul Tracy picks up 3rd, followed by Ribeiro, and then Jimmy Vasser in 5th. This is our best fight on the track, as Ribeiro is trying to close Paul Tracy.
And Ribeiro so far has been the fastest moving of the guys in the middle part of the pack. Look at him suck up behind Paul Tracy right there.
But he obviously doesn't have the handling. As soon as he gets the turn, he backs off a little bit. Handling, you got to remember, this track is almost all turns. Handling is very important. Of course, horsepower is. But horsepower only does you good if you have the handling to go along with it.
We'll keep watching as Ribeiro moves to the inside of Paul Tracy. They're side by side through the first corners, but Tracy gets a little better run off the corner. Still, Will he be able to hold it down the backstretch as Ribeiro begins to use that draft? Darts out, darts to the inside, and Ribeiro is around Tracy. That puts him into third place. Gary Gerould, any more on Michael? Gary Gerould, any more information on Michael Andretti?
Indeed, they've taken and changed all the electronic components that they can, and they will try to fire the engine and get him back out. The engine just now coming to life. The wheels are moving. We'll see if this works. It engages, stutters, and slowly he gets away.
So Michael Andretti sputtering back into the action. The same time Al Unser Jr., who started 13th, is now running 8th. And Michael tries to get her back up to speed. Hopefully they have whatever problem he has fixed. And Parker Johnstone is still the leader.
And as Michael Andretti came out of the pits there, a scary moment for Parker Johnstone. He dropped very low, way down on the apron. That's below that white line you see on the lower part of the picture. That part of the track is leveling out, and that can really throw the car into the wall. I'm amazed he took that line. But it's obviously working for him, because Johnstone now leads by 9.53 seconds over Teo Fabi in the Reynard. Had a great run at Cleveland, Fabi. Almost had the race won, but came into the pits and then had some kind of mechanical problem. In third now, Andre Ribeiro, also in the Honda. The Honda power just unbelievable here at Michigan on the Super Speedway. As there you see the battle between Scott Pruitt and Mauricio Guzman. One is, of course, running in the Lola Ford, one in the Reynard Ford. Also the Firestone and Goodyear battle there, the Brazilian and the American. Scott Pruitt, who's raced here a couple of times before. Guzman raced here for the first time last year, finishing 15th back in 1994. That battle is for the 6th and 7th position, but the leaders are, or the leader, Parker Johnstone, has pulled out amazingly on the rest of the field and lapped a lot of people, as we now see Pruitt having a battle with Al Unser Jr. We've only had 4 winners ever from the pole here at Michigan, so for Parker Johnstone to do it would be unbelievable, because we've got a lot of pit stops involved in today's race, and that's why you see Villeneuve and Michael both coming in. They know it's a long race. There's a chance they can get back out and still score some points here at Michigan. A race normally, or very familiar with attrition. We only had 7 finishers last year of a field of 28 cars, so a long day ahead of us. 250 laps, 500 miles. And there you see Pruitt once again going alongside Guzman on the outside, and that's Junior getting by Pruitt on the outside there. Al Unser Jr. didn't have a great qualifying run. The Penske's been struggling. Of course, they didn't make the Indianapolis 500. That's Alessandro Zampedri behind him. Zampedri had some great practice runs, but a disaster in qualifying. Guzman now goes down the inside of Al Unser Jr. for that position again, and Pruitt chases them. Unbelievable racing. As we mentioned before, Guzman loves this track, as Jacques Villeneuve now pulls back out onto the track, but a number of laps down. Junior once again past Guzman.
Back at Michigan, and Al Unser Jr. is on the fly. He's been carving his way up through this field, and now is battling Big Mo, Mauricio Guzman, for 6th. Not much of a battle. He dispatches him just that quickly, and now will set his sights on Jimmy Vasser, who runs ahead about 200 yards. Jacques Villeneuve is already back into the fight after they've done the work on his car, but he has fallen well back in the order. We'll try to give you an update on how many laps behind. And Guzman, who had a good battle going for a while with Paul Tracy, just got really sucked under by Al Unser Jr. when he came up and got Tracy, and then got by Pruitt, then got by Guzman. So now it is Scott Pruitt and Mauricio Guzman that battle, but Guzman comes off the corner low.
They have been running side by side like this for several laps. Bobby, I'm glad that the boost was cut back and the speeds cut back a little bit. This seems awful fast as it is. It could have been another 5 to 8 miles an hour faster without those horsepower restrictions.
Everything is pretty much the same, Sam, except that it takes them a while to get up to speed. That same old flywheel effect. A heavy flywheel takes a long time to get turning.
Look at Guzman fall back suddenly.
It's going pretty good.
Guzman fell back suddenly behind Pruitt.
Parker Johnstone is still the leader. We've had one incident today, Carlos Guerrero. He's now with Gary Gerould.
Carlos, can you tell us what happened in that situation that ended up with such a heavy impact on the wall?
Well, yeah, the Erdix car was all weekend with understeering. I don't know what happened, but this morning is still the same. And at the race, the car was with oversteering, completely different that was this morning and all weekend. So I start moving my bars to try to find the correct setup of the car. And I ride to turn number 3, and I lost the car.
Well, we're happy that you're all right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Scott Pruitt chases Al Unser Jr. Continuing battle for 6th place.
Now this is pretty much of a race right here that we can kind of look at between engines. Both of these cars look like they handle about the same. Little Al in the front car there is the Mercedes, and Scott Pruitt is in a Ford. Let's watch this one.
We'll listen to Scott Pruitt. So in a fight like this, I doubt he's on the radio too much at all. Eddie Cheever driving for A.J. Foyt, who has not been quite as racy since that first lap accident at Indianapolis. Looking pretty good here today. Started 18th, now runs in 10th.
You can see little Al on the left, Scott behind him. Now Scott's picking up a draft, Paul. Not a whole lot of draft, just so everybody knows, because these cars have to get a little bit closer than that to get a big draft.
You ride with Scott Pruitt. Started 12th, now in 7th, chasing Al Unser Jr. Battle for 2nd. As Andre Ribeiro overhauls Teo Fabi and moves into 2nd.
That makes
also
Honda's
moving through lap traffic right now.
That makes Honda's 1-2 in this race at this point, and also Firestone Tires 1-2 over Goodyear. Goodyear has this enormous winning streak of over 300 consecutive races. I don't think they've been menaced like this in 20 years.
Sam, I think what we're seeing here is a horsepower difference and not the tire differences. I think these tires have been pretty evenly matched. Firestone and Goodyear.
Oh, I agree with that. I just mean as far as the outcome of the race. Yeah, the Honda is just giving those.
Paul Tracy grabs off 3rd place. Puts Teo Fabi back to 4th. And speaking of Teo Fabi, let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, the combustion engineering team wants to try and make this a 5-stop race, and the way they're going to do that is try and make their first stop no sooner than lap 50. So they're down low on fuel, but they're going to try and run it 6 more laps and then look for Teo Fabi to come on the pit road.
Now we're on lap 44 of 250 right now. We should see many of the teams beginning to lay out equipment for a stop any time now. Fastest lap of the race thus far was just turned by Parker Johnstone at 230.6 miles an hour.
That's not a lot with a draft, too. Remember, all this air moving around makes like a big whirlpool. It really helps them in speed. Another thing to remember is nobody, meaning the mechanics, don't know what the fuel mileage is going to be at 40 inches of manifold pressure. So here comes, looks like Johnstone right into the pits right now. So they don't really know what their fuel mileage is, so right now it's going to be interesting.
The leader of the race, Parker Johnstone, he's led the first 45 laps. He relinquishes now, Gary.
Oh, Paulie slides through. They've blown the stop for the moment. We were afraid of that. From 230 miles an hour down to 90, it's slippery on the concrete. He slid through. They roll him back, and now the hoses are in place, and the tire changing process begins. But this is just a real tough stop. Remember, as you pointed out, this is his first time ever on an oval race. First time for this crew to work under these conditions. They were poised, they got him back, he's refueled, and he's underway. Let's go to Jack.
Well, Gary, now Andre Ribeiro will make his presence known on pit road, and we almost have a crash here between Adrian Fernandez and Parker Johnstone as they come by Ribeiro's pit. The team is set waiting for Andre to come in, and it looks as if as well we're going to see if possibly Teo Fabi will come in. No, Fabi looks like he will stay out, so it's all going to be Ribeiro on pit road. Going down very slowly. The speed limit is only 90 miles an hour. The Honda team will go to work.
Remember, it is very tough to get from that new pavement onto the concrete there without having problems. They've had problems all through practice with that. We saw cars spinning as they left the pits in practice.
So Andre Ribeiro, who
But Sam, remember, the one thing that Andre Ribeiro has going for him that Parker Johnstone didn't is the fact that he was able to do this in the Indy 500 as well. Go from blacktop to concrete.
Right.
Lead swaps regularly now. Picked up by Ribeiro, then by Teo Fabi. Paul Tracy is in the pits now, as most of the teams making their stops. Not yet stopping, of course, though, is Teo Fabi. Jimmy Vasser and Scott Pruitt are staying out as well. So is Mauricio Gugelmin, trying to milk every mile they can out of those fuel tanks.
And the idea, Paul, is they need a yellow. If they got a yellow, they would pick up roughly about a lap advantage on all the guys that are pitted now. They're looking for Lady Luck to help them, and that's good reason to stay out.
Mauricio Guzman from 4th place finally heads in. Teo Fabi from the lead. And here he is, Jack.
And Teo Fabi, the crew will go to work. Now let's watch and see, besides changing the tires and taking on the fuel, as you watch this pit stop, make sure to see that the crewmen, especially on the front, don't go towards the nose. One crewman tries to take debris out of the radiator. No changes on the car suspension-wise in 12.3 seconds.
And Jack, A.J. Foyt's playing with the tactics here. He's kept Eddie Cheever out, and Cheever picks up the lead. Remember, he nearly won the race at Nazareth on a good fuel strategy that went wrong only when he didn't get a full tank of fuel on the very last stop. There's Parker Johnstone, all these stops made under the green as he comes back up to speed. And as soon as the stops are complete, we'll reset the order for you. Cheever leads it. Brian Herta has not stopped either. He is in 2nd place. 50 laps are complete. Cheever comes in. We expect Herta shortly, and then Parker Johnstone will pick up the lead once again. But in 2nd place will now be Christian Fittipaldi, at least for the moment, who stopped on the 37th lap. Now here's that situation with Parker Johnstone. He just slid past his pit and over the hose. And Bobby, I would think that that's a violation, is it not?
I've been waiting for the black flag to come up from Wally Dallenbeck, because running over a hose brings out a stop and go penalty. And there's a really close wreck between Fernandez and Johnstone right there. That really got close, causing Adrian to go back around.
And that's what they're going to do with Parker. It's going to be a black flag for Parker Johnstone. Brian Herta stalled his car.
You got to figure it's Johnstone's first stop, first pit stop ever in his life. He comes in, he doesn't know what the speed is like. They've been running 230 miles an hour.
Well, Paul, Brian Herta had a near miss and one full miss. First, he slid very similar to Parker Johnstone as he come into the pits. When they had completed their work, the crew started to set him down. He stalled the motor. They got it restarted, and he almost stalled it again. Some of these drivers are having a great deal of difficulty getting traction off the concrete.
You know, one of the reasons for that, the concrete is still fairly new, and it's a little bit rough on the top.
Now a correction. They've not called for a black flag on Parker Johnstone. They have called for one on Buddy Lazier. And we'll try and sort those two reports out for you and find out what the plans are. There is Parker's pit. The IndyCar officials there, Billy Camphausen there on the left. Traxon is in charge of that area of the pits. Gary Gerald, the Penske cars have both been in.
Before we address that, Paul, a quick word from Doug Peterson of Comtech on Parker Johnstone. What was the ruling they just gave you, the IndyCar official, on running over that hose?
Yeah, they said because only the front wheels went over the hose, there's no penalty.
So you dodged a big bullet right there.
Yeah, we sure did. He just misjudged on the carbon brakes. They were cold, and the car didn't stop.
Okay, thank you. Now, regarding the Penske team, there was a problem for both Al Unser Jr. and Emerson Fittipaldi. Jr., the jacks retracted. They had to send them down a second time. He was held an extra couple of seconds, a problem with an air gun, and there was a problem with a wheel wrench also for Emerson Fittipaldi that lengthened his stop just a bit. Both men did get away cleanly and are on the circuit now.
So Parker Johnstone has the lead once again. In second place is Christian Fittipaldi, due to stop any time now. We'll be back after these messages and a word from our ABC stations.
As you see, 54 of the 250 laps complete, and we've had some major drama here at Michigan International Speedway, especially involving this man here, Parker Johnstone. As right in front of us now, Alessandro Zampedri comes in for his stop-and-go penalty. For Parker Johnstone, we thought would get one for his pit stop for running over the air hoses, but as you heard, the IndyCar officials ruled only the front wheels went over, not the rear wheels. That rule really is there for when you exit the pit. And now Michael Andretti is exiting his car. He's already been in the pits twice. Both times he tried to pull out, had problems with the motor. He's had troubles with the motor out on the track, and so they're calling it an early day for Michael Andretti, a two-time winner here at Michigan, but not today. Now Parker Johnstone is coming in the pits, and you can see major troubles out the back of his car. Oh, the Honda has just blown its engine. An unbelievable run going for Parker Johnston here. Now it looks like he's blown a motor and is coming in and calling it quits for him too. Tough break for Parker Johnston coming through the Camel Light IMSA series up into the Indy cars. He tested millions of miles at Indianapolis but didn't get to race there because they didn't have the budget to actually do the race. But he did all the testing, which enabled Scott Goodyear and Andre Ribeiro to lead so much there. Finally, they got some budget together with the Motorola sponsorship and the Bricks Racing out of the IMSA series to come to the Indy cars. Having tested here, they get to run, but now he's having major problems, and we see a lot of pit stops. Christian Fittipaldi, who was our second place runner, and Raul Boesel in the Rahal Hogan entry coming into the pits too. Boesel, that is unscheduled, he's already been in. Remember, he led for Yonks at the race here last year, and then almost gave Dick Simon his first victory, but had to pull it in with a blown motor. Now it looks like Parker Johnston has done the same. Although the crew goes to work, they're going to change all 4 tires, but it doesn't see. There you see Billy Camphausen, the IndyCar official, pointing to the right rear once again. Obviously they're having problems. That's another Reynard. Remember, Villeneuve came in and had problems with his right rear too. Robbie Gordon's crash was caused from the right rear. There may be a problem here with the Reynards, but what a disappointing day for the 34-year-old Parker Johnston in only his 10th IndyCar start, his first on an oval. Looked like he had the field. In fact, before he made his first pit stop, he had lapped everybody up to the 11th place position. He's going to hang in that car as long as he can and see if he can get it back out. His crew chief and team owner, Doug Peterson from Comtech. Those two have been together for a long, long time, and just a disappointing day for them. Our new leader now is Andre Ribeiro, also running in a Honda, but also, remember, in a Reynard. First time here for him at Michigan on the Super Speedway. And now you see Gilles de Ferran, also in a Reynard, having trouble. He is the quickest of the Mercedes so far this weekend, but now he brings a Jim Hall entry back around to the pit area, and we'll get a report from the pit lane to find out what happened to both de Ferran and Parker Johnston as Ribeiro continues to lead.
Well, a lot has happened in the past few minutes. Parker Johnstone had a display of smoke at the back of the car. May have serious engine problems. He's in the pits. Raul Boesel, the same sort of situation. Andre Ribeiro picks up the lead. Let's go down to Gary Gerald.
Paul, as it turns out, it's not an engine problem for the Honda driven by Parker Johnstone. It's the upright on the right rear. It could be a wheel bearing, it could be a CV joint, but it's definitely in the upright. And just as Team Green did with Jacques Villeneuve, they are now changing, the Comtech team is changing the upright on the right rear for Parker Johnstone. Meanwhile, he sits under an umbrella trying to stay cool while his team works on that very hot suspension part. Let's go to Jack.
Well, Gary, one man that won't complete the 500 miles is Michael Andretti. And Michael, you were real strong, had a lot of horsepower, looked like, and then it went away, not all at once, but little by little.
Yeah, something started to develop a miss in the engine, and you know, it got worse and worse to the point where I couldn't really stay out there. So I came in, they tried to replace everything, and went back out, and it still was missing. So we're done.
A lot of talk about 1996, especially with the performance in Indy and then the performance here again by the Honda engines. Could there possibly be Honda power in the future for Newman Haas Racing?
I don't know what's going to happen there right now, but you know, the Hondas, they've done a good job, and it really showed this weekend.
Well, it's tough to see out.
Thanks.
Certainly showing right here, Andre Ribeiro in front. By the way, Gilles de Ferran also came into the pits. They have the cowling off of his car now, and Ribeiro leads for the first time in his IndyCar career. Second is Tracy, third is Teo Fabi, then Scott Pruitt and Mauricio Gugelmin.
Ribeiro's domination suddenly in this 500-mile race, Paul, doesn't it remind you of the way the last 500-mile race almost ended, with Scott Goodyear running for the same team with the same mechanical setup as Ribeiro has now, almost winning that race?
I think the main thing we got to start watching for today, we've seen too many of these right rear upright bearings going bad, and that's what everybody else, now all the mechanics and the team leaders up and down pit row are talking to each other and figuring this stuff out. So they're going to be checking their cars and telling their drivers on the radios, if you feel something weird on the right rear, come in and let's check it, because that's a very dangerous thing. If that bearing seizes up, something breaks back there, it's a guaranteed wreck if they're still up to speed.
And now they've indicated Raul Boesel is retired with an engine problem. Scott Pruitt, he started in 12th, now runs in 3rd. Here is Brian Herta, who runs 13th now. We'll take a lap with him.
This shows you how smooth the racetrack is. Right here now, it used to be real rough. Their hands used to take a big step. Coming out of turn 4 here now. Up really close to the wall. Kind of straighten this little dog leg on the front straightaway out. Wide open, never backing off. Remember, with 40 inches of boost, they don't have a lot of pressure. Into turn 1, going right by Penske to do opposite bases. Coming out of turn 2, really close to the wall again, down the back straightaway. Takes a hand off the steering wheel. Very relaxed. Now, he can do that on this new track because it's paid. You didn't do it in the old days or like a year ago. But just watch it. Very easy. His head is leaning over against the right, pulling probably 2.5 or 3 G's in the turns. Down the front straightaway again, right by the start-finish line there. Easy on the steering wheel, not a bit of problem. Takes no pressure to turn that steering wheel right now.
Then Gil de Ferran, where we told you he was in the pits. There's Jim Hall. Gary Gerould.
Yes, indeed. De Ferran having a problem with the electronics. That was, of course, what brought Michael Andretti in initially. Like the Newman-Haas team, Jim Hall's team changed the electronic components, set him back out. We understand, however, from the crew, it is still not functioning the way they would expect it or want it to. So problems continue for Gil de Ferran.
And as a matter of fact, while he runs down the backstretch with a cluster of other cars, right behind him is the leader of the race, Andre Ribeiro, who closes up behind him and is being quite careful in the pass. Saturday on ABC Sports, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway rolls out the red carpet for the stars of stock car racing. Defending champion and NASCAR points leader Jeff Gordon battles a field of the world's finest at the Brickyard 400 live. And then on ABC's Wide World of Sports, Dale Earnhardt and the world's top drivers battle in identical cars in the International Race of Champions. Plus, we begin coverage of the World Track and Field Championship from Gothenburg, Sweden. That's all Saturday here on ABC Sports. Al Unser Jr., by the way, has pulled up into 4th place now. So it's Ribeiro, Tracy, Pruitt, Unser Jr., and Teo Fabi, the top 5.
This is Ribeiro's best race by far this year. His finishing positions have been littered with positions in the teens, except for Elkhart Lake, where he finished 4th. He has never led convincingly like this.
Pruitt at the back of Tracy, battle for 2nd. And there goes Scott Pruitt as Tracy gets a little bottled up behind Gil de Ferran. And Tracy doesn't seem to be able to respond to that challenge readily.
Remember how Pruitt and de Ferran came together in the last laps of the race at Cleveland last week, putting de Ferran, who was leading the race at the time, out.
Raul Boesel out of the race. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Raul, you want to go 500 miles. Did the power plant just give up in this heat today? What happened?
No, I'm an early spectator today, but my Duracell Lola was running fine. We even paced ourselves because we knew it would be a lot of mechanical problems this race, and you know, just gave up too early.
How about the heat and the actual conditions on this new surface here?
No, everything's fine. It's not too bad. It's hot, but you know, the smoothness of the track make much easier this year.
Well, we're sorry you're out. Thank you.
Thank you.
From time to time here, you'll see the number 12 car of Jimmy Vasser. He had a 39-second stop. He had trouble with his right rear as well. And he is running in 11th, trying to get back on the leader lap.
It's obvious that this track imposes. You see the battle for 3rd. Now it's little Al Unser on the right there. He has come up so far from his grid position and now is threatening Paul Tracy. But it's obvious that this track imposes incredible loads on the suspension.
Another thing, when a guy is drafting like little Al, boy, look at him coming up.
Big time.
Boy, that was a draft.
Really got to run. I'm just starting to say, the drafting is free. Boy, you can get a tow better than getting with a tow car helping you out. Just really get a big suction.
So Unser Jr. up to 3rd place. Jack Arute, Penske's looking strong here.
And Paul, his performance, that of Al Jr., may have been preceded by his lack of performance in Indianapolis. Let's go all the way back to the Memorial Day Classic. Remember, little Al was the only driver of the two between he and Fittipaldi to try and stick with the Penske. The reason he said after the race is, I wanted to get that car in the field because it may be slow, but in race conditions, as he goes by Scott Pruitt, in race conditions it drives like a Cadillac. It's just a breeze to drive. He doesn't qualify well, but he wanted a car that could go 500 miles in comfort. And in the heat, in the humidity, and the pressure of today, it seems to be paying off for Team Penske.
Al Unser Jr. around Scott Pruitt into second place and just puts his teammate Emerson Fittipaldi, who's running 12th, 1 lap down. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
In the Derek Walker pit, of course, no Robbie Gordon today, so that puts it on the shoulders of the rookie who was second in the Indy 500, Christian Fittipaldi. He thought that he had a problem in his first experience here at Michigan. It turned out what he thought might have been a wheel bearing failure at the rear of the car, the wheel balance fell off, and so the car out of balance. He brought it into the pits, tires changed, he's back out there, Paul.
Well, Scott Pruitt running through the field. Bobby, I wanted to look at his on-board shot.
Look at that
Bobby,
tire.
Look at the front tire. Does that tell us anything?
Well, all that is a little hair growing around it. It really isn't anything wrong. It could possibly be a blister, but it's not likely. The reason you can kind of tell that is Scott hasn't slowed down all that much, and it doesn't seem to be getting any worse. The rubber should start throwing off pretty quick if it was a blister, or if it is, now leak right there, it kind of went away. I think what we'll see is if it's a blister, he'd be in by now.
Well, I love these high-tech explanations. Little hair growing on the tire, says Bobby Unser. Andre Ribeiro leading for the first time in an IndyCar race. Out in front. Al Unser Jr. is second, 78 laps complete.
And Chile's lone representative in the IndyCar Series, Alessio Salazar, back out on the racing track after making an unscheduled pit stop. Don't forget, though, this guy had a great run at the Indianapolis 500, drove up through the field to finish 4th, picking up a bunch of points and, of course, tons of cash as far as the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is concerned. Salazar, though, at the moment is listed fairly well down in the field, although working his way back up. He is in 13th position, running for the Dick Simon Racing Team. First time here for the Chilean native at the Michigan International Speedway. We have a number of rookies running here this weekend. In fact, we have 7 rookies here at Michigan. One who is not a rookie, Al Unser Jr., chasing down Andre Ribeiro, and this great battle going on between Scott Pruitt, who we ride on board with right now, and right in front of him, Michael Andretti, his teammate in the Newman Haas entry. That's the Lola Ford of Paul Tracy going in now to turn 3. And I was going to say they back off a little, but they don't. The rules of the track here with the new repavement and the lack of boost, it's flat all the way around. There is no lifting on this circuit as Pruitt makes the move around the outside. And there you see in front of them, that is Vassar, who is putting another lap on Bobby Rahal. Jacques Villeneuve has gone back out to rejoin the battle after 2 lengthy pit stops. Remember, he had a trouble at the right rear on that Reynard with his the wishbone, and the same problem we've been seeing with a couple more of the Reynards here too this weekend. Pruitt now goes by Rahal, who is not having a good run at all here this weekend. His teammate Raul Boesel is already out. Ribeiro seems to be extending his lead over Al Unser Jr. There's no one between them now. That's just a straightforward battle. And then this battle we saw just go past Bobby Rahal between Pruitt and Tracy for the 3rd spot. Mauricio Guzman is now in 4th, and Eddie Cheever in 6th position. We see Tracy now has dropped back to 5th as he has come into the pit, so therefore he's lost that position to Guzman, and he has got a standard pit stop going in here, taking on 40 gallons of methanol, changing all 4 tires. They have extra tires here for the Michigan 500 because of the mileage, and he should be back out underway.
Second round of stops beginning now as Paul Tracy has made a stop in the pits. Routine under green, in and out. Leader is still Andre Ribeiro, followed by Al Unser Jr. and Scott Pruitt. Goodyear has a formidable presence here at the Michigan International Speedway, not only on the track, but also above the track with the Goodyear blimp Spirit of Akron hovering overhead, providing us with spectacular aerial views. So now we anticipate stops by everyone in the field, save Tracy, who has just made a stop. The question, Jack Arute, I would suggest to you, though, is tire wear.
Well, Paul, we may see the first chink in the armor. Here in the Teo Fabi pit, they had to pit 5 laps earlier than they had hoped to because of a blistered right rear. It's right behind there. You can see the blisters on the tire there. So the first thing that the tire engineers do when they see a blistering situation is check the black book. Check the tire pressures, check what conditions the tire ran under. This should not be a cause for immediate concern, but you can be sure that the tire engineers are huddled over here, and they're discussing the situation right now. Also, keep you informed, we've got a report that there may be a tire problem with Scott Pruitt as well, and the leader will be pitting, Andre Ribeiro, in 2 laps.
Problems sometimes are encountered while coming into the pits here because the cars race with these carbon fiber brakes in order to save weight at the brake. They don't heat up quite as easily. They're not as well balanced when you stop. So sometimes you see them have trouble coming in. Watch
Alonso
Little Al.
Jr. running second, peels off. So does the leader, Andre Ribeiro. So Little Al follows the leader into the pits. And we'll watch both of these cars as they come to their marks simultaneously. Ribeiro closest to you, Al Unser Jr. well down the pits.
Classic racing.
Everything routine for Unser, just waiting for the fuel. Got him rolling in 13.6.
Gary, problems with the Firestone tires on the right front. A blistering problem for Andre Ribeiro. The right front tire has a blister all the way around. So as we suspected, there are tire problems both for Goodyear and Firestone. We can get a shot of it right here. You can see the blistering, not on the right rear, but on the right front. Well, the problem that we have is we have a crewman that was trying to hide it away from us. We got him away. There you go. Just like Goodyear.
The guy shouldn't try to hide it, Jack, because we can see it on television. That's exactly what's happening. And a lot of that is caused from the track is very hot today. The sun beats on the track, gets the surface very hot. The tires have not blistered all during practice and qualification. But this is what happens when the temperature goes up. Now right there you can see that hair growing around on Pruitt's car, and that's blistering. Now the tire's not unsafe. If it doesn't get any worse than that, of which we've watched him run for a long time, it's not unsafe, but it does take away a little bit of traction.
And as you can see there, Scott Pruitt moved up from 12th, now runs in the lead, due for a stop any time now. And we'll listen in, see if they're going to call him in.
Got a clean pit, got a clean pit. The speed limit, be careful about them locking up the wheels.
That's Jim McGee talking.
Gentlemen, we got the same problem with the right front on Scott Pruitt's car. Blistering on the right front, taking a survey of the right rear as the crew completes their work and taking on the methanol fuel. No problem with the right rear. So it's right fronts for Firestone, right rears for Goodyear.
Paul Tracy suddenly slowing down. Was running in 8th. Heading down into the pits, but remember, he was just there.
Got something wrong because he was too low to be coming into the pit, Paul.
And the leader is now Mauricio Gugelmin, who should stop any time now. But remember, there he is. In fact, he may be dialing for the pits right now. He is. He led the most laps at the Indianapolis 500. Jimmy Vasser will assume the lead. That is assuming he does not come in. If he does not, then Andre Ribeiro is back in the lead, followed by Al Unser Jr. Fittipaldi, Emerson in this case, makes his stop. Pit road still a very busy place on the 92nd laps. Emerson Fittipaldi, this is more than routine. Gary?
Notice at the front of the car, the air jack is broken. They had to manually use the lift to get him up in the air to change the tires, and now he's gone. But that means an extra man has an extra duty, and it takes a little more time.
Gives you an idea, too, of how strong those noses are when you can just stick something under there and lift it up. Andre Ribeiro now with Gugelmin and Vasser both to the pits, picks up the lead once again, followed by Al Unser Jr. 93 laps complete. Jack Arute, Jimmy Vasser's in.
And they're having trouble getting the car into the proper gear. He gets away, but Jimmy Vasser also on board with Goodyear's. He has a blistering problem on the right rear.
You can test all you want, but on these very high-speed tracks, temperature conditions like this and the pressures of racing itself will bring out characteristics that you can't test for.
Also,
sometimes.
Sam, it's the new pavement causes a lot of this. The heat and the new pavement. There's so much traction on this new pavement, it's hard on the tires.
Andre Ribeiro, who has climbed up through this field from 10th, looking good. Parker Johnstone is back in the race, but 31 laps behind this car, the leader, Andre Ribeiro. Emerson Fittipaldi's been given a black flag for pit speed limit. Let's go to Gary Gerould in the Newman Haas pit.
Well, the remaining portion of the Newman Haas team astride the motorcycle, ready to go back and try to cool down. Paul Tracy, this was an engine-related problem?
Yeah, I think we dropped a rod. It shook real hard coming through the middle too. Big disappointment for the Kmart Budweiser team. The car was handling great. We were able to stay with the Hondas, stay with Ribeiro, and I was cruising, you know, not turning a lot of revs, running 6th gear. So it's a big disappointment, really. So it's we move on to the next one.
What's going to be the key for whoever wins this race under these conditions?
Well, it's awfully hot, and you know there's still a lot of guys running, and just biding your time and waiting it out, and that's what we were trying to do. But we had a motor failure.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks.
So Paul Tracy, he's out. Andre Ribeiro is still the leader, followed by Unser Jr. and Scott Pruitt. Here's the stats on the last set of pit stops. And as you can see, the team, the Pac West group, did a nice job for Mauricio Gugelmin. Everybody else in order, but Gugelmin, he picks up a position. After 100 laps, we have had 2 cautions for 12 laps. 5 cars are out of the race. We've had 7 different leaders and 9 lead changes, and the average speed's coming back up. 184, now pushing 185 miles an hour. There's Parker Johnstone back into the fight, 62 miles behind his Honda teammate. Andre Ribeiro, teammates in the engines, but of course not in teams. Andre Ribeiro drives for Tasman. And we'll take a look now at the relationship from Andre Ribeiro. We look now for Al Unser Jr.
10 seconds and change back.
There he is. So Andre Ribeiro handling up all of the field here at the race.
And Ribeiro is pulling away. He's a young man who studied law for a couple of years. He's very inexperienced on ovals, which makes what's happening all the more extraordinary. In this year so far, he's only scored 2 points on ovals, ranks 20th in IndyCar standings for his oval performances, but this is something else.
Now, Little Al's going to be running in 6th gear, or what I was referring to earlier is the overdrive. I know Roger Penske, I talked to Roger last night, he's not going to let that engine over rev. His main purpose is to finish. He feels that if he does that, that's the only way he's going to have a chance of winning. Honda's for sure outpowering everybody pretty bad.
Ribeiro is trying to pick up drafts where he can. You saw him nip in behind Parker Johnstone, and there again, he obviously is not just cruising by a long shot, and I'm thinking he's using the road, Bobby, in a way you rarely see here. He's all over the track.
He's most likely doing the same thing that Little Al is, running in what their overdrive gear would be, Sam.
Teo Fabi was trying to stay on the leader lap there, couldn't do it. Andre Ribeiro got around him. Jenny Vasser was running 9th, but he's got a problem, Jack?
Well, indeed he does. They took on tires and fuel, but more importantly, Jimmy Vasser had to come in. They're going to have to exchange the battery and what they call the track box. Now that means they have to take the rear deck lid off the car, one of the side pods. The crew will have to put an alternate battery and box in there. This is not the ECM, the electronic management, but more or less what they utilize to control the voltage to the motor itself. So obviously, as smooth as this track is, still the electronics have got a problem.
Boy, the 4th row really paying off here. Ribeiro started 10th. He's first. Al Unser Jr. started 13th. He's second. Scott Pruitt started in 12th, and he is 3rd. Andre Ribeiro continues to lead here. Traffic running just ahead of him. Take a look at his fastest lap versus his fastest lap. We'll be back after these messages and a word from our ABC stations.
Andre Ribeiro continues to rule here at Michigan, the 500 presented by Speed Stick. His first not first 500-mile race, but first time here at Michigan for him. The rookie who came through the Indy Lights Series with the same team he's running with now, along with the Englishman Steve Robertson, who won that championship last year. Jimmy Vasser now gets out and back underway. He has 73 points in the championship. Got a whole string of points running together with a second, first, and second position. And looking for more points here this weekend. Teo Fabi in the Reynard had a great run. He sat on the pole here in 1983 as a rookie. Almost won that championship for Jerry Forsyth. He's rejoined that team and having a great season in the last few races in particular, although going out with a DNF last weekend having led at Cleveland for a long time. Fabi actually having a fairly good battle at this point with Eddie Cheever, Alicio Salazar, and Mauricio Guzman. There you see Cheever right on the back end and making a move right now for the position. Cheever looks like he's going to be able to pull it off as they come by us right in front of the main grandstand. And Cheever picks up the position. And they are now coming up also on the next position, which is being held by Guzman. So Cheever able to get by Teo Fabi. Eddie Cheever's team owner, AJ Foyt, of course, who raced here many times, will in fact step back into a racing car next weekend as he goes to the Brickyard 400 in Indianapolis, and he will attempt on Wednesday and Thursday to qualify for that race, which runs on Saturday. So we could see AJ Foyt racing again, and may of course see him racing full-time next year in the IRL. There you see Jacques Villeneuve coming up on Fabi. He is a long way down. He's had 2 very lengthy pit stops. Villeneuve, in fact, has only completed 97 laps. Our leader has completed 112. Villeneuve, of course, at this point, just trying to make up ground and score more points in the championship, which he leads quite healthily by 32 points over Bobby Rahal, who you see right there from the Goodyear blimp. Rahal, the only Rahal-Hogan entry left in the race, as Raul Boesel has gone out. And, of course, Bobby Rahal running the Mercedes engine with the Lola chassis. And Alicio Salazar continues to run very well. He has worked his way up, as we mentioned before, to 7th position. There you see him trying to get by Jimmy Vasser, who just had that lengthy, unnecessary, or not unnecessary, but unscheduled pit stop, which dropped him down a few positions. Salazar, with the great run at Indianapolis, finished in 4th position. It's Ribeiro over Junior, Scott Pruitt in 3rd, Guzman is 4th. Let's go back now to Paul Page.
Back at the Michigan 500, presented by Speed Stick. Nothing has happened while we've been away. Andre Ribeiro is still the leader over Al Unser Jr. He's got 12 seconds on Little Al, and then 6 seconds back is Scott Pruitt. The rest of the top 12, well, they're running several laps down, but remember, that really doesn't matter here at Michigan International Speedway. You can make those laps up in just no time. Parker Johnstone, who's come back into the fight, as we said, and we showed you, well, he just ran the fastest lap thus far at 2:26. He really is on the fly. Running in last place, of course, almost 60 miles behind the lead, but he's going to stay in this fight.
The incredible thing, as they run right now, there's a Reynard chassis in 1st, a Penske in 2nd, a Lola in 3rd, and a Honda engine is in 1st, a Mercedes in 2nd, and a Ford in 3rd. So we have most incredible mix of manufacturers running out front right now. Eliseo Salazar, who started 23rd, now running 7th, so he's coming up through the field.
Keep in mind, Paul, the fastest lap of the race has been 229 miles an hour. Qualification fastest lap was 230 miles an hour.
All right, let's go to the pits. Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, we checked with the tire engineers as to what changes might we look for in the next series of pit stops to resolve the blistering problems. Remember, they're indiscriminate. They both obstruct Goodyear and Firestone. Both sets of engineers said they think they can cure them by changing the tire pressures and making minor wing adjustments. Nobody, I repeat, nobody seems all that concerned about the blistering problem right now. Let's check in with Gary Gerould. Gary?
Well, we're down here in Camp Penske, and Al Unser Jr., of course, running a solid 2nd, and we were just doing some quick checking on his pit stop sequence. He went 41 laps on that last stop. We're anticipating him now in 7 laps on lap 125. The point we want to make here is that it looks like he's getting excellent mileage, and he's on the threshold of turning this 500-mile race into a 5 pit stop race. If he can, that could be huge. Now, yellow flags, of course, could have a major influence on that. But they love the way the car's handling. We'll see him inside of 7 laps for his 3rd stop of the day.
Christian Fittipaldi, boy, he came in, tried to make a stop. Didn't get it stopped at all. He's going to have to go around.
Well, those guys were lucky they moved out of the way on that one, Paul. He just obviously didn't see his pit, went right by his tires. Thank God he didn't hit one of them. Did a lot of wiggling and right back on the track. Now he goes around another lap, comes back in. He felt that the loss would be less this way than it would if they'd had to pull him back in.
Currently runs 17th, Christian Fittipaldi. Here's a replay of that, Bobby.
Yeah, and here's he locking up the front tires. He can't stop. Now, I think he should have stopped and got pulled back. That would have saved a heck of a lot less time, or taken a lot less time than going around here. It comes back in again.
There's the problem of the carbon fiber brakes hooked up with the problem of getting onto the concrete smoothly. It's very hard to get these cars slowed down here.
Bobby, which surface will give you more braking, the asphalt or the concrete?
Well, it just depends on the state of it. Right now we have new asphalt, which has more traction than the concrete. By the time the asphalt cures, it'll probably come being close to the same.
Mauricio Gugelmin in trouble. He was running fourth. Look at the back end there, Bobby.
Smoke coming out of the back. That's a sign that he's probably got an engine problem. And keep in mind on the engine problem, they're wide open all the way around this racetrack, and especially with the 40 inches of manifold pressure. Literally wide open all the way around the track.
And what that will do is bring Eddie Cheever up into fourth place. Cheever, who's back in the cycle now. Gary?
Mauricio Gugelmin, and they suspect that it's a wheel bearing problem at the right rear. That's one of those stress load factor deals that you always contend with at Michigan. The crew is assessing right now. Big Mo gets a cool drink. Now the engine is turned off and they've got some work to do. What an unfortunate break for Gugelmin.
And when the smoke comes out the back like that, we often think that it's a engine, but in this particular case, those bearings are going to smoke too. We've seen a lot of bearing problems so far today, and there it is, the right rear. Those guys already knew it. And what happens is the car starts wiggling on the racetrack. The drivers have already been told that they're going to have or could have these problems, so it's just a normal thing. But the reason they keep changing them is almost all the guys seem to be having this problem. So how it turns out on the end is the guy that does the fastest work in a hurry going to come out ahead again.
I think that, I'm not absolutely sure of this, Bobby. I think the problems are being confined mostly to the Renard cars. We'll have to keep tabs on that. Certainly not to the Penske cars, and I don't believe to the Lolas either. Let's keep an eye on that.
When you saw Christian Fittipaldi come into the pits and then go back out, you also saw him run over, not with just two wheels, but all four wheels, the hose. And so they black flag him, bring him in for a stop and go penalty. But as all these other people fight their problems, this guy just keeps motoring. Andre Ribeiro still the leader, and the leader now by 11 seconds over Al Unser Jr.
But I mentioned that if the suspension problems are hitting Renards, you're looking at a Renard right there. So, does trouble wait for Andre Ribeiro or not?
You know, the mechanics that set up these things, these bearings are great big ball bearings, giant ball bearings in the right rear uprights that are going bad. And it's how much preload, how the mechanics set them up. And some of the guys in there use a different type of grease than the other guys do in those bearings. They always are overused, though.
Gary Gerould as Little Al comes in.
This time it was 37 laps as opposed to 41 laps on the last tank of fuel. Not anticipating any changes on the setup. Oh, he engages the gears. The car moved forward a couple of inches, no problem. Now he's away in 13.5 seconds.
So the stop-start once again. Al Unser Jr. comes in after 37 laps out on the course, and 37 laps of green, we might add. Fastest lap of the race thus far, Parker Johnstone, lap 84, 231.7.
That is faster than qualifying. He's really raised the price of poker here at Michigan. Problem is, right rear upright went out on him.
The Mercedes-Benz has managed now 37 laps between fuel stops. The Honda, Andre Ribeiro, he's got at least 39 laps since his last stop. And Scott Pruitt, Ford Power, right now at 35 laps. You saw this car just moments ago, Adrian Fernandez, as he battled Teo Fabi, and in doing so picked up fourth place. Expect the leader in shortly. And he already begins to slow down. Andre Ribeiro in for routine service. Once again, this fellow who has never led an IndyCar race before this day, doing a terrific job.
And Paul, the one thing that the crew wants to see besides changing the tires is if they were able to cure the blistering problem. Checking the right front, no problem on this set of tires for your leader, Andre Ribeiro. So it's going to be a nominal stop. Looks to be no changes in the chassis. Looked as if they've cured the problem simply with 16.3 seconds. As I said, simply changing tire pressures.
Very smooth stop. Just past the halfway point here.
So I just want to explain that tire pressure a bit, Paul. The more air that's in it, the more the tire tries to bow out in the middle, or the more the air pushes the tire out in the middle, and that's where they were blistering. So what the tire guys would have done is just drop the tire pressure by 2 to 3 pounds.
I'm surprised. I thought that was a biased tire problem that didn't occur in the radio.
No, it affects all tires because the air is still trying to go out, and it doesn't make any difference. The radials obviously don't change the shape as much as the biased fly tires do, but they still do change it, Paul. Don't you remember a few years back?
Bobby, he is not up to speed. What's going on here? Ribeiro suddenly, when he comes out of the pits, just never came up to top speed. Scott Pruitt picked up the lead, but he should be in the pits any time now.
Very slow, possibly a transmission problem.
Yeah, transmission is what I would bet on. He caught a gear in what looked like a funny shift to me from first to second, or maybe it was his second to third.
He's very slow. The wing shaking is not a problem. That's just a normal thing.
And Scott Pruitt now the leader, but he's due in, and that'll turn the lead over to Al Unser Jr.
Got a clean pit in, and then they're working on the car in front, but we're in good shape.
Again, a little blistering there on the right front, Gary Gerould.
Well, we see it as he comes rolling up, Paul, and now comes to a stop. Yes, clear. Blister on that right front, no question.
Give you the one
We'll
turn
see
up
if
on the
Pruitt
front
talks
wing.
to Jim McGee at all on the radio. That's open. Everything else routine. Now a change in the front wing angle attack, and it's a major change. Pruitt's rolling. 17 seconds, but the concern has got to be over the wear in those tires up front.
And what they did, Gary, is they turned up the right front wing, more downforce. They're going to put more pressure on the right front tire because he can't race as long as that thing is blistering the way it was.
Well, Paul, I'm down here with Andre Ribeiro. I asked the crew if they knew what was wrong. They shrugged their shoulders. They have taken the hood off. This looks as if it could be terminal for Andre Ribeiro. In fact, it is. He is going to get out of the car. What a tough break for this young man who had such a great ride here today in the Michigan 500. It's all over. We'll talk to him shortly.
And Al Unser Jr. is now in charge. You saw him as he came around Scott Pruitt as Pruitt was coming out of the pits. So little Al, having just made a stop, is now the leader of the race.
This is where Al Unser Jr. won his first ever oval race. It was an IROC race back in 1987.
So there's the leader of the race. We'll look back, see if we can find Scott Pruitt, who was a good 15 seconds back. And there he is. So that's the interval, first to second. Al Unser Jr. over Scott Pruitt, but a yellow flag could change that very quickly. Brian Herta has not stopped in his third.
Adrian Fernandez continues in the Michigan 500 here at the Michigan International Speedway. We saw him having a battle earlier for position with Eddie Cheever. Well, he maintains the 5th spot right now and seems so far to be having a fairly trouble-free day in comparison to most of the other people racing here this weekend. Just to update you, of course, Robbie Gordon did not start this one. Carlos Guerrero went out. There you see Andre Ribeiro, who led so many laps. He's now getting back in the car. Maybe they have solved the problem on his Honda, the Reynard. He got out and looked like he was calling it quits for the day, but you never do that too early, and now they're putting him back in the car, put his gloves back on, redo his belts up. Here comes the mechanic to do his belts up right now, and he should be getting back out underway after having such a great run in that Honda with the 14,000 RPM that they run. Once again, there you see Adrian Fernandez in the 5th spot. He is, though, a lap down from our leader in the 5th position, chasing, at the moment, Eddie Cheever. We have, as far as our leader is concerned, now 137 laps in the books. There you see the number 19 of Buddy Lazier. Normally Eric Bachelard drives that car, but he is having problems with his right rear. And we point this out mainly because he is the first of the Lolas to have that problem. We've seen all the Reynards come in and have to make some changes at the back there, but now Buddy Lazier brings his Lola in, so we could see potentially more trouble for the Lolas having a trouble with the right rears. There is the battle between Fernandez. Actually, he's coming up now to lap Danny Sullivan, the number 17 Pac West entry. Danny Sullivan won this race back in 1988 and has not won here since then. Would obviously love to come back and win, but with the PacWest team, it could be kind of tricky, even with that new special engine they're running from Ford this weekend. It's not the Series 2 motor that you see in the Ganassi Racing team, being run by Jimmy Vasser and Brian Herter. Herter, of course, right now running in the 3rd spot. Once again, here you see Andre Ribeiro, and he is rolling and getting ready to go back out on the track. Brian Herter pulls back out of the pits after coming in from a 3rd place pit stop and is rolling again. Tom Anderson, the crew chief on there, seemed quietly confident this morning when I spoke to him about the chances for the Target Scotch Ganassi entry. Seem to be having a good run here this weekend, especially for him. Vasser, though, has been in a couple of times unscheduled in the pits. Andre Ribeiro trying to get back out on the track in the LCI Tasman Steve Horn entry. There you see Al Speyer of Firestone, who is overlooking their race weekend here, is trying to get the first victory for Firestone since 1974. And Jimmy Vasser continuing to race.
Jack?
Well, so far, Andre Ribeiro is now officially out of the race. They are going to roll it. And you can see this gentleman right here. Well, he's with Brazilian TV, and with Andre being his countryman, you give professional courtesy. They will continue and carry on the conversation in Portuguese. See if we can get in here real quickly, and we're going to listen as the interview is given. Go ahead. We want to listen in Portuguese to the interview. Excuse me? We want to listen to your interview with Andre in Portuguese.
Okay. Pois é, esse microfone é da ABC, eles querem acompanhar a nossa entrevista em português, a rede americana ABC. André, difícil, né? Você estava liderou muito essa corrida. Qual a sensação?
É um super desapontamento, mas não acaba aí, tem muita coisa pela frente. E eu tenho certeza que a gente chega lá.
Well, it's very obvious, and I don't know anything about Portuguese, but right now I'm sure Andre Ribeiro said that he was one of the most disappointed drivers ever to come down the pike. We'll talk to him after the Brazilians are through.
Yeah, but he does have a day that he can be proud of. I mean, it was a great run while it lasted. Al Unser Jr., leader of the race, has now completed 143 laps. Another man who can be proud of this day is Parker Johnstone. Gary Gerould?
Well, indeed, he can be very proud. I know it's disappointing to be on this side of the pit wall. We were down there and saw that they were having a problem with the upright on the right rear, but you also had a very close call on the racetrack when there was a failure.
Well, we really did. God was looking over us today because I had just gone under Eddie Cheever on the entry of turn 3, and the right rear upright failed and snapped me sideways, and I'm just very thankful I didn't get into Eddie. And it was so bad I couldn't even make it back to the pit lane. We circled around, came in, lost all the brakes. The guys on the Motorola Cellular, Firestone, Honda, Renard crew from Comtech Racing did a great job. All that Daytona experience paid off. They got the upright change and went back out. Once again, the fastest car on the racetrack, which is a tribute to them. But the damage from the upright had damaged the brakes. And when I came in for my stop, the pedal went to the floor. And thankfully, we didn't go into the Penske crew and unfortunately was into a fantastic oval debut. I learned a lot, and it looks like Andre and the Tasman guys were doing a great job or have just retired as well. And I tell you, Honda's day is coming. It's just not today.
Well, he may be a rookie here in the ovals, but he got all the sponsors, he got all the teams. We're happy you're all right. Thanks, Parker.
Thank you very much. And I got to tell you, thanks to Team Penske, to Rick Mears, Al Sr., and Al Jr. for all their coaching. What a fantastic weekend for us. Thanks, guys.
Let's go to Jack.
Well, Gary, let's try and get it in English from Andre Ribeiro this time. Andre, what happened?
We had some electrical problems. The wires did burn, and we had to stop. We did try to come back, but then we realized it was not possible.
Describe the emotional roller coaster that you've just endured over maybe the last 5 minutes.
Well, I think we had a fantastic car. The LCI Honda car was just so much ahead of everybody else. For me, it was very easy because I was just cruising. Thanks very much, Honda, Firestone, and of course, Tasman, LCI. It was incredible feeling. Unfortunately, we had to stop a little bit early.
And we understand now, gentlemen, that Bobby Rahal's got some problems. Back to you.
Yeah, Jack, the man with the most experience in this race, 14 races, starting more than any other, was running 8th. Suddenly slowed down. He stopped only 12 laps ago, so certainly unscheduled. and he's shut the engine down already. Nothing changes on the course. Unser Jr., Pruitt, Eddie Cheever, Adrian Fernandez, and Eliseo Salazar, the top 5. Gary Gerould is now in the Rahal pits.
Well, I think it's the 4th one that I can be aware of this afternoon. It's a right rear wheel bearing once again, and we're seeing this now all too familiar scene of the crew working on the upright at the right rear. This time it's Bobby Rahal, second in points and up there challenging. He wants to stay out there. He wants to try to track down and gain points on Villeneuve.
Gary, this time it's Lola. We've seen most of that problem hit the Renard, so this is something new.
I was just going to remind you of that, Sam. They're all having problems except the Penske so far.
100 laps to go yet with these failures. 19 cars running. Buddy Lazier is still in the pits. They're working on his car, and they're working on Bobby Rahal's car.
Another thing you want to keep in mind, if you're wondering, we have a spin out and an accidental.
And it's Hiro Matsushita. Took a spin up in 4. And doesn't look like he touched anything. Looks like he just had a right rear go and got down on the grass, but he's kicked a lot of debris up on the track, dirt and gravel. So they're yellow. First time, very long time. This race had been running at a record pace, fastest 500 ever, 194 miles an hour. 5 miles an hour than the record set here in 1990 by Al Unser Jr. Boy, look at all the grass that he tore up. So Hiro Matsushita brings out the yellow flag at the 150th lap. Just lost it coming off of 4 and didn't touch anything, so maybe he'll get her back into the fight. We'll be back.
Well, suddenly drama at Michigan International Speedway as we try and complete the 250 laps or 800 kilometers of the 3.2 kilometer oval here at Michigan. That is Teo Fabi, who may well have run over some debris from the Hiro Matsushita incident and blown a Goodyear tire on his Reynard. Fabi, who had been running way up front as high as 3rd at one point, pulls the car right in front of us into the pit lane. At this point of the race, he was listed in 7th position. They're going to go to work on that right rear. We don't think it's a problem as far as the arms are concerned. It's just the tire, which we think may have blown running over debris from Hiro Matsushita's accident, which took place coming out of turn 4 in front of the main grandstand. He then spun onto the grass in front of the pit lane, where the IndyCar crew are now giving him a tow and getting him out of the way so we can get back to green flag racing. Hiro Matsushita had his best ever finish in an IndyCar race here last year when he finished 6th. And he is running on the Firestone tires, and we don't know, maybe that was a blistering problem for him that caused his incident coming out of turn 4. But remember, that crash taking place at approximately 228 miles per hour. A very speedy moment for Hiro Matsushita, who has obviously done in this race this weekend. Fabi back out underway, and the field continues to follow the pace car around. It's Unser Jr. over Scott Pruitt, Adrian Fernandez in 3rd, Eddie Cheever in 4th.
Back under a full course caution, the leader of the race, Al Unser Jr. And under this caution, though, Al Unser Jr. comes into the pits, and that gives Scott Pruitt the lead. It's a great way to see a race hanging overhead and watching the race from the Goodyear blimp. It's the Spirit of Akron floating over this circuit here. So the leader of the race comes in. Al Unser Jr. makes his stop. Scott Pruitt picks up the lead under the yellow for Hiro Matsushita, who looks like he just had a problem with the right rear that caused him to come out of control. Let's go down to Gary Gerould. Maybe he can enlighten us on some of these tire problems.
Well, we heard from Al Spire with Firestone a short time ago. They're having wear on the right front. Leo Mel is the general manager of racing for Goodyear. You're having tire wear concerns here on the right rear. How substantial is this problem, Leo?
Well, we've had some blistered right rear tires, and we've lowered the air pressure on a number of cars. It seems to be helping. What's happening, they're blistering slightly, but it's not affecting. Nobody's had to stop early. We just had punctures on the 33 and the 18 car in that last accident, but I think we're okay for the rest of the race.
Okay, that's the story from the Goodyear side. Let's go to Jack.
Well, Gary, they're going to take advantage of this caution period. The Patrick team has called in Scott Pruitt as we listen on the scanner as well. Now, watch the crewmen at the front of the car. Once they've completed the exchange, they'll go to the nose, make a turn. They're going to take the wing out. That was the amount of wing that they put in the last stop, and he almost stalls it. Boy, was that close, guys.
Well, that could be costly. They'd have to pull the car back, restart it, Too costly, Jack.
My Scooter got it out of the pits, though. You know, there's some good news here. We've got some great physicians that work on the circuit with us. Dr. Terry Trammell and Dr. Steve Alvey were recognized and, in fact, honored by the National Athletic Association, NATA, in June for their contributions to athletic training and motorsports medicine. Dr. Alvey was inducted as an honorary member of NATA for his contributions, and Dr. Trammell was presented with the prestigious President's Challenge Cup Award, presented each year to a physician who's made a significant impact in sports medicine and in athletic training. We're very proud of both of them and thankful for the good service that they give all the drivers and crews here in IndyCar.
Well, Jacques Villeneuve, who is currently in the 18th position, he will be bumped up quickly to 17th as Hiro Matsushita is listed in that position, but now done for the day. The jet dryer goes past us on the main grandstand, blowing away any debris and any marbles or rubber buildup that we've had throughout the race, and we should get a green flag fairly shortly as they've cleaned up the mess from Matsushita's car. Jimmy Vasser has pulled into the pits once again, another unscheduled stop for him, but taking advantage of the yellow flag situation. We saw our leader Alonso Jr. come in, Scott Pruitt came in, and also Adrian Fernandez. The problem with coming in on the early laps of a yellow flag situation is you then go to the back of the pack. So although they're at the back of the pack, they now have all these cars in front of them that aren't on the lead lap, but they've got to work their way by, and of course that becomes a problem when you're dealing with traffic. The only thing is they can hope for by going in first on the yellow flag situation is then the remainder of the guys go in, and by a process of elimination they can work their way back up towards the PPG pace car. There you see Vasser coming out of the pits. That's the important blend line taking effect there, and now he has to try and work his way in front of Villeneuve. Villeneuve gentlemanly lets him in the line, and that really is a battle between drivers. There's no right to Vasser in particular going in there, but he has bumped his way in, and really you just have to hope that they let you. Bobby Rahal is getting back out underway after spending many laps in the pits. Also had problems with that rear arm on his Lola. We've seen that happen to Buddy Lazier too. Now he pulls out there. You see the PPG safety car out on the track. You've got to keep all four wheels underneath this yellow line until that cone on the left you just saw. Now you can put two over the line, and once it goes white, you can put all four, as now Bobby Rahal goes down the backstretch and tries to catch up with the rest of the pack, which are right in front of us on the main straightaway right now, in front of this huge crowd on hand here at Michigan. Alonso Jr. in his Penske won this race in 1990, didn't compete in the Indianapolis 500, would love to get the 500-mile win here for Roger Penske at Roger Penske's beautiful track, which you see overhead from the Goodyear blimp. And there you can see the masses of cars and fans that are packed into this track here at Michigan. We're about 1 hour west of Detroit. Of course, we were in Michigan early this season for the race around the street circuit of Detroit, which was won by Robbie Gordon. Robbie Gordon not racing this weekend after the big crash on Friday. He will score no points in the championship, but it's looking good for him because Jacques Villeneuve down in 17th could pick up maybe 1 or 2 points if he ends up in about 11th or 12th with this attrition working to his favor, but doesn't look like he will score many on his big lead in the championship. Junior leads over Scott Pruitt in second, Eddie Cheever in third, Adrian Fernandez is fourth, Brian Herter fifth, Alessio Salazar is sixth, Teo Fabi is seventh, and Emerson Fittipaldi is eighth. Green flag this time by.
Back up to full speed.
Keep in mind, Little Al had about a 20-second lead. Now they're all closed up on him.
Parker, look at those guys. Can you believe you were out there with them just a few minutes ago?
Well, I tell you, once you get in the car, the whole world changes, and as well as the track's holding up today, and as good as our Motorola Sailor car was, we could drive low, middle, high. Those guys are having a great time out there, but they're also balancing the risk every single lap with potential gain or loss.
So now the field spreads out. Al Unser Jr., Scott Pruitt are the fight at the front. Eddie Cheever there as well. Go on board with Adrian Fernandez. He runs in fourth place. Plenty of traffic ahead.
Everybody except the guys in the front are really picking up a big draft right now.
We'll just ride with Adrian. Parker, you were the fastest guy here all day. Why don't you take us around for a lap? What are you thinking at these points?
Well, right now, I can tell you, Adrian's looking at Christian Fittipaldi, wondering if he's going to come down on him or give him some room. And as you can see, there was enough of a wash off of Christian's car that Adrian had to get out of the throttle there.
he's going to have to time his run a little bit better, because if you don't get a good run at the appropriate time, he's going to be stuck in this group and not be able to get through it.
They're both picking up a draft from the guys clear up in front. They've got a big whirlwind going on around there now. Once the cars all get going together, it kind of makes it like a little whirlwind going.
Adrian's going to give it another try here, but once again, he's going to get shut off by Christian. What he needs to do is get a little stronger run off him out of turn 2 and go inside hard, even down onto the apron, to make Christian realize that he's serious about getting by there.
And Parker, as good as these onboard cameras are, does this really show you what the banking is like here?
You know, I was really surprised. We were here testing a month ago, and I took my mountain bike up just to take a ride around the track, and you can't believe how steep it is in turns 1 and 2. I mean, it's a serious hard pedal up to the top, but when you're in the car, it seems like it's nearly flat.
We're going to move around here and pick up Bobby Rahal, who runs in 14th place as he comes under Teo Fabi, who started alongside Parker in the front row. Parker, we understand from starting that you can handle the heat because you're tough and from Oregon, but what about the rest of these guys? How bad was it out there?
Well, I do a lot of training for triathlons. I don't actually compete because my team owners don't want me to get hurt, but you'd be amazed at the number of physical fitness programs and careful diets that every one of these drivers are on. There's only 1 or 2 that don't adhere to some sort of strict daily training. And I've got to mention while we're on board here with Bobby Rahal that I could hear the cheer from the Honda pits when I drafted by Bobby the first time around past start finish. And it's one of those things. Bobby did a great job for Honda, but just couldn't hold on. And I've talked to Bob recently, and he really wants to come back.
And there goes Adrian Fernandez. You were just on board with him a few moments ago as he sails past Bobby Rahal. 162 laps complete.
Parker, you talk about the fitness. I know that measurements made, tests made with drivers have seen that their heart rate goes up about triple or even more what it is at rest. Are you ever aware of that when you're driving?
Well, I actually wore a heart rate monitor during a test not too long ago. My resting heartbeat right now is 42 beats a minute. My maximum is just over 200. And it's very interesting. Prior to the start of the test, my heart rate was actually higher than when I was actually driving. And I think, like any aerobic athlete, I think what you find with these drivers is that on restarts or the start of the race, their heart rate's probably pretty elevated, but now they're back into some sort of nice pace.
Oh, Parker, here's a problem. Eddie Cheever was running third, slowing down. It's only been 11 laps since his last stop. Gary Gerald, you're there with AJ. Watch out.
AJ is talking on the radio. The headset has come out. What's the problem, AJ?
I don't know. Something happened, I guess, to the motor or drive gear. We won't know till he gets here.
I'll tell you what, I know you'd been frustrated because this season had turned around from such a successful early start. Things were going very well up to this point today.
Well, things are going good, but I guess something happened to the gearbox. I have no idea.
All right, well, you can hear the disappointment in his voice as he steps to the wall, and here comes Cheever. We told you last week as Eddie throws the steering wheel that AJ was going to go test for the Brickyard 400. He did test on Monday. We don't know for sure if he'll try to enter that race or not. We suspect he will. And look at the body language now from Eddie Cheever as he just bangs that fist in frustration. He knew he had a good race car today and a great chance at a 500-mile win.
And look at the shield on his helmet, how tethered that is from the air. That gives you an idea how much wind beating they take out there.
So Eddie Cheever, after a terrific run for A.J. Foyt, showed that he was back and ready to fight once again. Climbs out of the car. Al Unser Jr. is still leading. We'll be back after these messages and a word from our ABC stations.
Eddie Cheever scores his 8th DNF of the year. Very disappointing day for him, and there you could see how disappointed Eddie was because he did have a great car running and it was running up as high as 3rd at one point and battling for that position, and just a shame to bring that day to a close for him. Eddie Cheever very, very disappointed, still looking for his first IndyCar win. Emerson Fittipaldi there, he is actually further down in the field in 7th position, but he's running right behind Al Unser Jr., his teammate who is leading this race, and right behind Emerson Fittipaldi, who had his first ever IndyCar win 10 years ago, right here at Michigan, celebrating 25 years of racing, especially, in fact, 24 years with Marlboro, racing the Marlboro McLaren. But there you see is a battle of Scott Pruitt, but Salazar is chasing Emerson Fittipaldi too. And Pruitt is, of course, chasing down our leader, Al Unser Jr., who has about a 1.5 second lead over Scott Pruitt running on the Firestones. Al Unser Jr. obviously on the Goodyears and the Penske with the Mercedes engine. Mercedes has a couple of victories so far this year, one coming for Al Unser Jr. at the Grand Prix of Long Beach, and one coming for Emerson Fittipaldi at Nazareth on an oval. They, of course, didn't qualify for the Indianapolis 500 and trying to get another big win for Mercedes right here at Michigan. We have now 169 laps in the book, and only Junior and Pruitt are on the lead lap. One lap back is Adrian Fernandez in third. Brian Herter runs in the fourth position. Eliseo Salazar in the fifth. Teo Fabi, even though he had that tire go flat on him, continues to run in sixth. And Emerson Fittipaldi is in seventh. Stefan Johansson, we ride on board with him. We saw earlier he went out in 1993 with a big crash. But what they did here with this race, they normally run the 1994 Penske chassis on this Tony Bettenhausen team. They get Roger Penske's old equipment. But as you remember, they had trouble qualifying this car, the 94 car at Indianapolis. So they went back to the 1993 car, which they qualified at 6th position in 1993. Well, they had a terrible run in qualifying yesterday, and they went all the way to the back of the pack, and Stefan Johansson stepped out of the car and said, do they have a last lap or last row party here as they do at Indianapolis? Because he got all the way bumped to the back. That's because he had pop-off valve troubles. Scott Pruitt using the draft of Vassar to come right up on Al Unser Jr. and fight him for the lead.
Well, in the last few laps, the gap has been steadily closing between Scott Pruitt and Al Unser Jr., the leader, and now it is a fight for the lead as Scott Pruitt tries to overhaul him on the high side. 171 laps of the 250 are complete. Scott Pruitt has been able to chase down Al Unser Jr. Let's watch and let's listen to the two-way radio. Parker Johnstone, you continue to watch. This is a super little duel. Scooter really moved up on him.
He really did, and what you're seeing is a classic drafting duel, just like we've seen in stock cars recently. And this is, now that they've resurfaced MIS, what a great place, what a great battle. Scotty's going high, Al's got the low line. This is going to be a real race of strategy between these two.
Well, looking at this onboard camera, when do you begin to feel the vacuum behind the car ahead of you?
Scott's definitely got it now. He's just got to get his timing right so that he can pull up at Little Al at just the right time to duck underneath him, either at the entry of 1 or turn 3. He's definitely got the toe now, and if he times this right, he might be able to get in underneath him.
Scott tries to get him high. Again, he just doesn't have enough to do it. Can he get him coming off of the corner? Now still tucked in. We'll continue to watch this battle for you. A year ago here, Eddie Cheever started driving for A.J. Foyt. He almost had one wrapped up for him today, Gary.
Yeah, the bank look in the eyes, I think, really tells the tale. We keep an eye on that battle up front. And, Eddie, I know you felt like you had both Pruitt and Unser covered. You thought you could surpass them.
I think my car was probably the best one out there in traffic. It was running very well. I'm bitterly disappointed. I think something went wrong in the drivetrain in the back, but it was a heck of a race. And my compliments go to Penske for repaving this place. It's a lot of fun to race here now.
I know it's been tough in recent weeks, so there have been a lot of disappointments for you and this team, and this looked like it was going to be a real bright spot.
I thought I had probably the best chance of anybody out there to win the race, but we didn't. Again, thank you.
It's Eddie Cheever.
Remember Pruitt's pursuit of the lead at Indianapolis. And
boy, look at it here, though. Scott Pruitt tries it low and takes the lead.
Whoa.
Scott Pruitt out in front. Boy, and he really, the draft worked there.
It really did. You saw what Scott had to do is he had to drop way back to get another run on Al because he had lost his momentum, and he timed it just perfectly, used the draft, went right by him, and I'm sure now we'll see Scott pull out from Little Al.
Happy Pat Patrick there.
Well, you can see the smile on Pat Patrick's face, but what you're seeing right now, you're seeing the guys run their racing gears opposed to their overdrive gears. And Penske probably had told Little Al to
look at this. Back. As they get caught up behind the slower car of Brian Herta, who is not in the battle, and Little Al tries to make the move.
Almost had him captured there.
Well, there's where momentum just pays off.
Whoa, and one car in trouble. This is Salazar, and it is yellow. And you heard Jimmy McGee scream pit to Scott Pruitt. Boy, a gentle kiss of the wall.
And you can see water running out from under that car right there. Look at the number 7, the water running down. Probably water, not fuel. It's probably what caused him to spin. Probably broke a radiator or a hose or something like that.
So here is Scott Pruitt in. Tires look good, off and on. And Al Unser Jr. has already been in and out of the Penske pits.
Well, here's the deal on Scott Pruitt, guys. This is not what they wanted to see. They had hoped to push the window to lap 196 with the idea in mind that they could then go with one final stop in the waning moments for just a couple of gallons of fuel. The window for Pruitt had only opened up 3 laps before that. So now if you heard him say go 7 o'clock on the fuel, there's a reason for that. What they're doing is they're trying to signal to Scott Pruitt to conserve as much fuel as possible so they can still adhere to that gas and go philosophy at the end of this race. Gary?
Well, we're down here in the Penske pit. Jerry Breon, who's the tire man for Team Penske on Al Unser Jr.'s car, checking now the measurements as the tire that came off. No signs of wear whatsoever. We had checked with him just a few minutes ago, and he said that on the previous stop, they did have one very small blister. It did not impact the wear of the tire at all or the performance of the car. So Breon and the crew talk. They plat more tire strategy. Roger Penske, of course, is on the wall in that familiar pose just a few feet away. And this Penske team knows they've got a fight on their hands with Scott Pruitt in the Michigan 500, Paul.
Well, the average speed was coming up. It was up at 188 miles an hour. This caution's going to hurt it, but it's going to make for a terrific race here at the front between Scott Pruitt and Al Unser Jr. We'll be back.
Riding on board with Adrian Fernandez as he pulls out the pits, and I tell you what, a great drag race that was between him, Danny Sullivan, and Bobby Rahal, 3 abreast coming out of pit lane. These guys actually had a little bit of a telling off yesterday as we had 2 cars, including Paul Tracy, spin in pit lane yesterday in practice. Kurt Russell, one of the directors of IndyCar, told those guys that's not what we're supposed to be doing in practice. We're supposed to be professional. In a race course, the attitude is slightly different, and they all barreled out 3 abreast. Rahal, Sullivan, and Fernandez. Sullivan was able to get the best of all 3 of them. Of course, not for positions, as those guys are further down in the order. There you see Adrian Fernandez wiping both his mirror and his visor, carrying a little rag on board with him. There you see he's also cleaning the windshield that allows his vision to that right rear mirror. It also, of course, directs the airflow around the cockpit for him. Keeping that rag, and they tuck that just right down in their crotch area underneath the belt, and we'll keep that out with him all day long on the racetrack. Alicio Salazar out of the car, obviously okay. Disappointing day for the Chilean, running here for the first time at Michigan, trying to get the car into neutral. It takes the driver to do it. See, the Indy guys can't do it, so let's see if Salazar can. Get that car put into neutral, and they'll tow it back out. Slight contact with the outside wall. No damage really to the car, but obviously a mechanical problem. Sprayed some liquid up on his rear tires. That is what caused him to spin, and he is out for the day. Disappointment after running as high as 7th at one point in this race, and of course had that 4th place finish at the Indianapolis 500. Having a good run in the 500-mile races, or 800-kilometer races in the conversion for the Europeans on this 3.2-kilometer oval. Pruitt is now our leader, had 5 pit stops. Al Unser Jr. is 2nd, Fernandez 3rd, Brian Herter 4th, Fabi 5th, Fittipaldi 6th, Sullivan is 7th.
Eliseo Salazar of Chile has brought out this yellow as a result of a blown engine over in 1. Now let's take a look from Adrian Fernandez on board camera. Fernandez is up there in that pack, coming off of 4. Down across the tri-oval and across the start-finish. Now keep an eye way ahead up there. Boom, there goes the engine. Now then all the water out of the engine sprays back, not only on our camera, but on Adrian's visor, and then he almost collects Salazar as Salazar spins up to the wall off of turn 2. Here it is again. Watch Fernandez. He's virtually blinded.
Whoa. Well, that was close, and there wasn't anything anybody could do about that. Certainly wasn't Salazar's fault. It was an engine that just literally exploded. Look at the white smoke coming out. The white smoke is oil, water, everything getting together. Now you can see the spray. Look at it way up there. Then the spray comes back and gets on the next car.
Salazar must have seen it coming because he got down low. The IndyCar safety team trying to get the course cleaned up there off of 2. In the meantime, let's go to Jack.
Well, this man knows what it's like to go to victory lane, but it's been a while for Pat Patrick. You got out of racing, you came back to try and help Firestone get involved. And Pat, you only live just down the road here, but the question is, what are you going to do about your fuel strategy? Because it looks, I noticed you and Jim McGee were chatting about it and trying to decide, is it going to be a gas and go we may see at the end?
I can't really elaborate on that because Jim and I haven't agreed yet.
Oh boy, Jim, why don't you get in here now? What part of it do you want to argue for, a gas and go?
We haven't agreed to disagree either.
This is what makes racing so very important, though, the strategy that unfolds on pit road. Forget the drivers during the caution. You guys are checking your telemetry, you're checking between yourselves and the years of experience. What do you think will be the determining factor, Pat?
Well, it depends on how the cars perform, and Al's running very well. Of course, so is our car. The Firestone tires are doing excellent. As you know, the 2 Honda cars are the fastest cars on the track. Roger is a tough guy, and it seems like old times, he and I fighting it out. I just hope we're both here at the end.
Well, the great thing, guys, when he was talking to me, look at over here. Jim McGee had one ear cocked, and he kept trying to see what Pat might say to see if he could get an edge on that argument and that agreement to disagree.
A couple of real smart cats right there.
Next Saturday on ABC Sports, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway will roll out the red carpet for the stars of stock car racing. Defending champion and NASCAR points leader Jeff Gordon battles a field of the sport's finest at the Brickyard 400 live. And then on ABC's Wide World of Sports, Dale Earnhardt and the world's top drivers battle in identical cars in the International Race of Champions, and I'm telling you, don't miss that one. Plus, we begin coverage of the World Track and Field Championships from the Oakbrook, Sweden. That's all Saturday here on ABC Sports. After 181 laps, there is the full field rundown under the yellow, so everybody's tucked up nice and tight. Interesting names there moving up. Johansson, St. James, Jimmy Vasser, who had a 1:29 pit stop, would put him behind. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
We heard from Pat Patrick. Here's the other friendly rival for so many years, and it's kind of like old times. We're saying Roger Penske battling Pat Patrick's team. Your thoughts, your concerns at this stage of the race now for your driver, Al Unser Jr.
Well, I think we've got a real good car. Pruitt's running well. It's great to be racing Pat here at the Michigan Speedway. I think the key thing is trying to finish. You know, we've run strong in this race before. Last year we let it need to keep this pace under control because it's tough on the engine to run them over 13,000 every lap. So, you know, our concern is reliability all day. The engine's been running great, the Mercedes, and what we have to do now is just work smart. Al feels good with the car, and we'll see what happens. I'm sure it'll be a shootout at the end.
Last night you had a reception honoring your 500 champions over the years, and you have all those beautifully restored race cars. What would it mean to Team Penske to come back and win this 500-miler in view of the frustrations you've had thus far this year?
Well, in racing, there's nothing like momentum, and I can tell you that to win this race would be great. Al won the IROC race yesterday, so maybe it's a good weekend for us. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed, Gary, and Al's doing a heck of a job.
Thanks, Roger.
You know, since we mentioned it, the Penske restoration area just outside of this track is the home to 20 of 24 Penske chassis that have been built since 1974. And there they are.
Al Unser Jr., the Penske driver, has actually the race record here for the Michigan International Speedway, set back in 1990, over 300 kilometers per hour, a time of 2 hours, 38 minutes and 7 seconds. Looked like we were on a roll to beat that record this weekend, but now with our fourth caution period probably not going to break that record. Riding on board with Adrian Fernandez, who was running as high as 3rd position. And you saw that spectacular view on board with him as he went through the blown motor of Alessio Salazar. And then we saw the results of that blown motor end up all over his visor, over his front windshield, and over his mirrors. And that's why we saw him earlier with that rag. Here it is once again. Look ahead of you, then the left-hand part of the picture, and you'll see Salazar's going to blow right through the smoke. Doesn't even adjust or do any lifting. Did you notice there's not one lift? He's still doing 230 miles an hour into that blind spot, and then you see Salazar on the right-hand side as he almost collects him after the incident. Unbelievable. Now, from another angle, as we see Salazar spin on his own debris or his own oil, and there you see Fernandez going through and almost collecting him. Unbelievable. Once again, on board with Adrian Fernandez, right through the smoke, not a lift. Blind, completely blind through there. And then carries on. Salazar still up ahead of him. There you see all the liquid come out and get over the car, and that is what these guys are cleaning up right now, which is why it's such a long yellow flag period, because they have the quick dry out there and they're trying to get it cleaned up. But a lot of oil and a lot of water out on the track, and of course at 230 miles per hour, you don't want that. There you get a good view of the left front wheel of Adrian Fernandez's car. You may notice it's slightly different from the wheels we normally see on these cars. That's because it's a Speedway wheel, a BBS lightweight, about 16 pounds. Overhead, Michigan International Speedway, where there is a near capacity crowd on board with a Goodyear blimp giving us these beautiful aerial shots as you see the pace car lead the field through the main grandstand area along the main straightaway, or actually part of the tri-oval past the pit lane. This crowd has been doing very well actually to survive the amazing heat we've had here this weekend. And they've been coming in since about 6 o'clock this morning. They'll be going out to about 9 o'clock tonight, I would imagine. A huge crowd on hand, and the heat actually is really starting to beginning to bother some people down in pit lane in front of us. We've seen a lot of people rushing around with extra water. Of course, all the pit crews are in full fire suits, as are the camera people that are running down there. And it's a long, long time to be out in this hot sun with no natural shade whatsoever being offered down there. So it's turning out to be a long day for these guys. They fight for shade. There you see the Fernandez crew looking at the times as they go through in a run of the field, a run down of the field. To remind you, Carlos Guerrero went out very early on with an incident. Michael Andretti went out with electrical problems. Raul Boesel went out with an engine problem, as did Paul Tracy. Parker Johnston went out a second time without with the brakes. Andre Ribeiro went out with an electrical problem. And Hiro Matsushita went out with a crash. Eddie Cheever is also out with transmission troubles.
Back at the Michigan 500, presented by Speed Stick, 185 laps at 250 complete. Here's the way the engines break down. Scott Pruitt in that Ford has been very powerful throughout the day. Interesting commentary last night. Some of the people from Mercedes-Benz complained that we suggested and have suggested that the Mercedes does not get the distance that Ford does. Well, we're about to find out, because it's a head-to-head battle now with Scott Pruitt and Al Unser Jr. stopping on exactly the same time 5 laps ago. Lynn St. James now runs 9th in that 90th car, or number 90 car. Past couple weeks, she's been helping us out here in your absence, Bobby, and I got to tell you.
She's done a very good job today, Paul.
Well, she did a very good job sitting in your chair, too, pal.
I don't know about in the booth, but on the racetrack, I think she looks plenty good. But in my seat, maybe not so good.
I would do everything I could to get her a ride next year, my friend. Let's go down to the pits and Gary Gerould.
Well, Danny Sullivan is one of those that's lurking there, and I think 7th position, Paul, and they're doing it despite radio frustrations. The crew can hear Danny. Danny, however, can't hear any instructions from this side of pit wall, so they soldier on in the number 7 spot, Pac West.
There's Stefan Johansson. He runs now in 8th place, so he's been able to keep that 94 Penske car alive, and just ahead of him is Christian Fittipaldi, ahead of him on the race course, but Christian's 10 laps behind. Emerson Fittipaldi is sitting in 6th place, just ahead of Danny Sullivan.
I just looked out and counted 17 cars left running right now, and we're really going to have a trophy dash to the end, it looks like. One more fuel stop. It's going to be a fierce one.
The yellow flag is still out. This is one of the few tracks, or not one of the few. Last week was the only track that we don't have the EDS computer scoring system. We have it here. It's not only used by us, but Scott Pruitt's engineer using the EDS display for the first time in the pits. Many of the teams use it, and it's really helpful. Gary Gerould?
Well, Eliseo Salazar had a 4th place finish in the other 500-mile race during the month of May at Indianapolis. Today, I know you had high hopes, but tell us what happened now that puts you out in that incident.
Yeah, well, I have mixed feelings with the race because I'm disappointed that we didn't finish. The engine went in turn 1, and, you know, all the oil went in the tires, you know, and I was lucky to hit the wall, but very lightly. So mixed feeling because of the disappointment, but also, you know, I think we did a good race. We were going to dice for the lead, you know. I was dicing with Pruett, and I think we proved, you know, that on super speed we were very good, so I'm very happy.
Contrast the different driving styles first at Indianapolis as opposed to the high banks and the speed you experience here with less boost.
Well, I think, you know, you go flat all the time. That's what really kills the engine. You know, there was the previous stint I went flat, you know, for 30 laps, and the engines are running very, very strong.
Well, we're about to go green. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eliseo Salazar back here, and he's healthy and fine.
All right, they begin to pick up the pace on the backstretch now. 185 laps complete. Scott Pruett, the leader. Al Unser Jr. will be chasing him. It should be a great fight. Interesting battle of contrasts here. Engines, Ford and Pruett. Mercedes-Benz in Al Unser Jr.'s Firestone tires on Scott Pruett. Al Unser Jr. shot with Goodyear. And, of course, 2 different chassis types sitting there. So we'll watch this battle as the green comes out and it begins to unfold.
Pruett can be very intimidating on a racetrack. You see little Al on the left, Pruett on the right. He's shouldered his way past several cars during this season. He's definitely one of the most aggressive drivers.
Oh, Al Unser Jr. just slides past Scott Pruett on that race start. And Pruett now has to give chase, but he does have traffic ahead. And one car sitting up very high.
Now keep in mind, too, either one of these guys or these 2 drivers, Pruett or little Al, run their engines too hard, too much RPM too long, they're liable to break them.
Here comes Pruett back on a challenge with Al Unser Jr. And Pruett comes down inside him, and Pruett comes back into the lead.
Boy, he timed that beautifully.
Now you can tell. Let's watch and see what little Al does, and that'll be by the instructions from Roger Penske on what he wants him to do. Meaning, does he want to turn the RPM, or does he want to have a little bit more gamble or assurance that he's going to finish, turn less RPM?
Now Pruett overhauls Teo Fabi.
Pruett, of course,
slows him down just a little bit. That gives Al Unser Jr. a bit of a chance.
Pruett driving for Pat Patrick, who has not had a winner since 1989 when Emerson Fittipaldi won the championship for him. That's how much this counts.
It's almost a shame that you can't see how much banking from the camera's ball as there really is. It's really a steep place that we just went through there.
Parker had a great example of that, riding his mountain bike up it, finding how steep it was. Just try walking up that in loafers or something. There's de Ferran, and of course Pruett and de Ferran came together in the last laps of the race just last week. So to see them this close, they almost came to blows physically after that incident. So there's a lot going down between these 2 men just in this last week.
Bobby Little Al doesn't seem to be able to mount a challenge right now.
It's because Penske is telling him there's still plenty of time to the end of the race. He's using the draft, and I'll guarantee he's running in what I call the overdrive gear. Roger Penske will not be flustered, and he's going to give Little Al the orders that are necessary. He's going to try to push Scott into running more RPM and breaking his engine. That's the whole contest right now.
It's been 6 races since Little Al had a podium finish, if you don't count Portland, where he won and was disqualified. But he...
Whoa! And Lyn St. James and Danny Sullivan are together.
They're really hung together. Those cars are actually stuck together right there. They can't get apart.
Let's check both drivers. Danny Sullivan not moving in that cockpit. Can't tell about Lyn. So the yellow is out again. That was a pretty hard hit on the right side for both cars.
Quite a bit of damage. If you look at the rear wing, it's gone off of Danny's car onto the right there. Lyn is to the left. Lyn is moving.
And Danny's head's still down. And another car involved, Herta.
Minus the left front wheel.
So what brought all of this on? And is Danny okay?
Look at all the parts scattered all over.
Brian Herta,
who was
limps
running
back
in
into the pits.
4th place. That really takes Herta out of a hot finish.
Apparently some concern about Danny. Lynn St. James moving around there. They walked away from her car, so apparently she's okay. They want to try and get the field slowed down onto the lower line there.
Gonna wait and see how it goes. As far as you know, if we cut a tire, if I start feeling anything funny, I'll let you know. But we'll just kind of ride it out here for right now.
Okay, 10-4, you just keep us posted as to how long you think it's going to be. We need a couple of 3 laps before you think it's going to go green.
So the conversation between Jim McGee and Scott Pruitt. Here come the contestants from last week. Combatants. Bobby Rahal, this may give us an idea of what happened there. Coming off of 4, off of 1, there's first car up into the wall, parts all over the place.
Oh.
Both cars together. Boy, Rahal almost caught a wheel carrier, up carrier and wheel.
Yeah, both cars got together, went into the wall together, it looked like. Not quite as good a picture we like to see yet.
Hard to tell if that was an engine going and then they got together, or if that smoke came off of tires locked up because they were already in trouble.
Looked like tires, Paul, but it could have been an engine.
One of those out was Brian Herta running in 4th place, Jackaroo.
And we're showing you the damage on Brian Herta's car. It is a mess on the left side. Brian, tell us what happened out there.
Well, I saw a little smoke. I think Adrian blew an engine, and it looked like maybe Danny was up there. They collected each other. They had nowhere to go, and one of their wheels came back off the wall and bounced right at me. I tried to miss it, and you know, there's just no room.
At these speeds, how much of it is thinking and how much of it is just plain reflex when you see a wheel bounding towards you?
Well, that's all reflex there. You know, Target Scotch video car was running great, and you know, we were looking forward to a good finish today. I'm disappointed for the crew, but you know, I got some useful miles here at Michigan. I've never raced before, and I'm looking forward to the next race in Mid-Ohio.
Guys, this is the difference between our normal 200-mile events and a 500-miler, the stuff that happens after 250 miles.
Well, there it is again, and still we're going to have to do some more analysis to find out what happened to Danny Sullivan, Lynn St. James, and as Brian Herta mentioned, maybe even Adrian Fernandez. We'll be back after these messages and a word from our ABC stations.
There you see the IndyCar safety crew who train all year long for such incidents as this one between Danny Sullivan and Lynn St. James, who are running up in 9th and 10th position here at the Michigan 500 presented by Speedstick. The doctors will be on hand, Dr. Terry Trammell and Dr. Steve Olvey, as they will try and extract Danny Sullivan from that car. They're obviously going to have to put him on the stretcher board. They'll put him in the back of the car and then take him to the Infield Medical Center, and there's a good chance he could be taken to the Foote Memorial Hospital just down the road where Robbie Gordon spent Friday night. Adrian Fernandez, we thought that Brian Herta had mentioned he thought maybe Fernandez had blew a motor and that's what started that. It doesn't look like that is the case as we now ride on board with Fernandez. But there was obviously some major problem. Sullivan and Lynn St. James get caught up together into the wall. Debris starts flying. That takes out Brian Herta's car. Bobby Rahal runs over that debris. He came in, changed all 4 tires and back out on the track. And we also heard Scott Pruitt make the report over the radio to Jim McGee that he felt he had run over some debris and he was going to have to come in. And they were telling him to try and make it last a couple of laps if they can before he comes in and makes that change. Now, if you remember, there was a big crash in front of Scott Pruitt at Elkhart Lake, and he ran over debris and he did not come in. He immediately had to go into the pits, and he lost a whole bunch of places, went all the way down to 27th in the field before fighting his way back up through the field. So they won't want to make that same mistake again. Riding on board right now with Bobby Rahal, who won this race. Actually, he's won it in 3 different forms. This race one year was a 150-miler. It was also a 250-miler and a 500-miler. Right now with Brian Herta on a replay. There you see Sullivan and Lynn St. James getting tangled up into the wall. Here is debris, and the tire combination wipes out, well, it looks like our camera is for a moment wiped out, but wipes out the left-hand side of the car that Brian Herta is, the Ganassi Ganassi entry of Brian Herter. That's a shame from Herter because he was running as high as 4th when that accident took place. There you see Lynn St. James has been transported to the medical center on the infield, a mandatory stop there, although she did look like she was moving around okay in the car and was able to get out of the car herself. Lynn St. James, of course, in top physical condition, does a lot of work for the Human Performance Center down in Daytona Beach, where she resides now in Florida. Although I spoke to her yesterday, of course, she said, well, I've not been home for so long, traveling with doing the ABC commentary and also involved in the racing with the Dick Simon team here, picking up that Whitlock Auto Supply sponsorship, which is a Midwest-based auto supply store. They're still working on getting Danny Sullivan out of the car. There you see Herder's team and Brian talking about the incident and explaining what went on. And another shame for him after leading at Cleveland last weekend on the restart. He thought he saw a yellow flag. He backed off, and that's what enabled Michael Andretti and the rest of the field to get round him. But he did come home, Brian Herter, last weekend with a finish in the 2nd position, which boosted his championship hopes. Scott Pruitt is our leader. We heard Bobby Unser talk about not running at full whack for the rest of the race because the motor may go. Well, Scott Pruitt, of course, if you remember, was up to 2nd in the Indianapolis 500 before having trouble and making contact with the wall. He is going to be determined to finish this one and finish it first for Firestone and, of course, for himself. He leads with Al Unser Jr. in 2nd position. Those two guys are on the same lap together. They're the only two on the lead lap at this point. Sullivan now on the stretcher. They'll put him in the back of the medical car and take him back. Here is Scott Pruitt, our leader, and in the Firestone tires, running in 2nd position at this point. It is Al Unser Jr. Now, they won't necessarily be in order out on the track. There is Gilles de Ferran. Gilles de Ferran is currently running in, well, he's being bumped way down the field at this point. He is in 14th position, but rides behind Scott Pruitt on the track under this yellow flag situation. There is Al Unser Jr., who is 2nd, and the only other guy on the lead lap. The battle between him and Pruitt for the victory here at Michigan. Right behind Al Unser Jr. out on the track is Teo Fabi, who is currently in 4th position, but 1 lap down from our leaders. Fabi had a great run at Cleveland just 1 week ago. Behind him, Emerson Fittipaldi, who was in 5th position. He is, though, 2 laps down on Teo Fabi and 3 laps down on our leaders, Scott Pruitt and Al Unser Jr. Behind Emerson Fittipaldi is Stefan Johansson. Johansson currently runs in 7th position, but is a lap down behind Emerson Fittipaldi. Then we have on the track Adrian Fernandez, so they were talking about maybe have blown a motor. He has not blown a motor. He currently runs in 3rd position, 1 lap down from our leaders and 1 lap ahead of Teo Fabi, who is in the 4th position. Although he's behind him on the track, it looks like Fernandez may be able to come up and lap Teo Fabi 1 more time. Rounding out the top 10, Jimmy Vasser is in 8th. Danny Sullivan was running 9th. This is Alessandro Zampedri. Had a great practice on Friday. Zampedri has now worked his way up to 10th, although he will jump up the position. He is 10 laps down, though, on our leaders. Danny Sullivan was listed in the 9th position. There you see Sullivan, looks like we may have some movement there as his knees are bent, but a serious possible head injury. We talked about Robbie Goulden's incident. The impact with 114 Gs on Friday. This looks like it was major contact too. Let's go back now to Paul Page, Sam Posey, and Bobby Unser.
Here on ABC, still full course caution. Danny Sullivan has just been extricated from the car and is now being moved over to the ambulance. We should see several more laps of yellow, which may figure into the tactics of the 2 front runners, Scott Pruitt and Al Unser Jr. As yet, we have no official word on the condition of either Lynn St. James or Danny Sullivan. And we've talked about the banking earlier. That's why all those guys are being very careful with that gurney. It is so steep there, they have to make sure they don't have it get loose on the way down the banking. So they're going to take Danny, get him in the ambulance.
We think of Danny's glamour and, of course, his long, very successful career in car racing, Formula One, coming here to Indy, driving for Roger Penske, winning the Indianapolis 500. But he has also paid the price from time to time. He's been injured several times in his career, and let's just hope it's not seriously this time.
We mentioned Dr. Steve Alvey earlier. Looks like he was one of the folks right there helping tend Danny Sullivan. Let's go over to Gary Gerould.
in the Penske camp, Roger Penske up there on the wall and plotting strategy. And what they're trying to do now is play a waiting game as these yellow flag laps tick off so very slowly. 200 laps now complete, 400 miles, 100 miles to go. What they want to do, if at all possible, is get to lap 210 to open up the fact that then they would not have to make another pit stop the rest of the way. Keep in mind, early, they did get 41 laps under green flag conditions. The next stop, however, was 37 laps. They can get to 210. They think they can make it the rest of the way under green flag conditions. But at this very slow pace, they're still just under 10 laps away from that. Jack?
Well, Gary, down here in the Pat Patrick team, almost precisely the same thing is going on. One of the things that the team has been doing, though, has been watching the television monitor, first and foremost to see the condition of Lyn St. James and Danny Sullivan, but more importantly to try and assess how long this caution will take place. Their window opened up at lap 200. The farthest they've gone thus far today was 46 laps. They feel that if they can get into that 205 to 206 area, they could give Al Unser Jr. and Team Penske a chase right to the finish line without having to take on additional fuel. Now, one of the things to remember when we go back to green flag racing is listen to the onboard radio, because the team will say, go to 7 o'clock, go to 6 o'clock, go to 12 o'clock. One of the interesting things we found out, though, because people change teams, the teams change what those signals mean. If you lose a crew member, he goes to work for someone else. He monitors the radio and says, they go to 6 o'clock. That may mean go to full fuel. It may mean only go to 3/4 fuel. All kinds of tricks and all kinds of things up people's sleeves here. This is what makes the pit strategy so very important.
Well, we're still waiting for the preliminary medical report.
Shit to sweep up after they get the car gone.
They've been working on cleaning up a lot of that stuff except for what's right underneath the car. It looks like there's oil and water and such, so it's probably going to be, another little bit. I can't see until they get the car up off the ground how much crap's underneath it.
So that's Scooter talking with Jim McGee as they try to anticipate when this caution period will be over and when they will be able to do their final stops. We'll be back. Back at the Michigan 500 after 200 laps, 12 cars out of the race, 14 still running. Scott Pruitt the leader. The average way down now with 5 caution periods, 8 leader changes, 8 different leaders, 16 changes. Cars out of the race, well, fairly extensive. Attrition here is always a factor. Guerrero, Andretti, Raul Boesel, Paul Tracy, Parker Johnstone, Andre Ribeiro, Hiro Matsushita with that accident, Eddie Cheever with the transmission. Eliseo Salazar had the engine go and then got up close to the wall, didn't quite touch it. Lyn St. James, Danny Sullivan, and Brian Herta in the incident that has created this caution period. And as we take a look at the full field rundown, Adrian Fernandez up there looking good. Scott Pruitt and Al Unser Jr. It's going to be a battle to the finish. There's no question about that. And Teo Fabi, who started there in the middle of the front row, fell way back in the field, is now working his way up, as opposed to, say, Emerson Fittipaldi, who has been steadily marching forward in this field. So that's your full field rundown. And let's go to Gary Gerould.
Just outside the fence here at the safety center in the infield is owner Dick Simon, concerned, of course, because already today you've seen 2 of your drivers experience problems, walk away. Tell us about what happened with Lyn St. James and if you've had any conversation with her.
Well, Gary, Lyn was doing a magnificent job. She was running 8th, I believe, at the time, and the car was absolutely perfect. She didn't want any changes, and she just radioed into us as she was going into turn 1. I believe the engine is going to let go, and it did. And at that time, she also said, whoa, and I think that's when Danny Sullivan hit her. The next thing I heard on the cart monitor that we monitored, that she was okay. Driver code 1 means that she was okay, so I gather that she's fine.
Okay, we appreciate that, and we'll stand by, and when we have further word relating to either Lyn or to Danny Sullivan, of course, we'll pass it on, Paul.
Well, that certainly clears something up, and that is which car may have, in fact, had a blown engine. We had speculated it was Lyn St. James, but that testimonial there by Dick Simon certainly tells us that the facts were that she did have an engine go, and Danny Sullivan apparently became involved immediately thereafter. So that's the story on the accident that we have at this moment. You're looking down from the Goodyear blimp, the Spirit of Akron, which continues to give us shots high over this track, some great coverage shots, and helps explain some of the situations here, though not the last one. So Scott Pruitt, his friends call him Scooter, is out in front. Al Unser Jr. lined up just behind him. Bill DeFerrin's going to be in the middle of this too, and he's been running at the same pace with the leaders. We'll keep Scott's radio open and continue to monitor the radio traffic by permission, of course, of the team between Scott and Jim McGee, the team manager.
Now, most likely, let's watch. The guys are still cleaning up the racetrack, Paul. But both of these guys are probably going to come in. There's the mess that's still on the track. Now just watch. Both Pruitt and Little Al are waiting to come in the last minute that they can go, because they'd like to get as close to the end of the race on this last stop. We think they can do about approximately 40 to 43 laps on a full load of fuel.
And Jack Arute, Adrian Fernandez looking pretty good with 45 laps to go.
And, you know, we talk about the good old days. Let's talk about Rick Gallis as well. He's put an ace face up on the deck here as well, because he is going to call his third-place driver onto pit road first of the leaders, thinking that maybe track position will help him just a little bit. They really feel like they have a chance to win this race. They've been talking to Adrian throughout this caution period, trying to pump him up, trying to literally get him to visualize what it would be like to go to victory lane. It's a little bit of cat and mouse down on pit road right now, guys. Everybody's monitoring everybody else, trying to see what's going to happen.
Adrian's coming in right now.
Exactly. So this is the first roll of the dice. Fernandez will be the first, and now the conversation will pick up with Pruitt and Al Unser. They'll have to determine, based on what Fernandez has done, whether they want to come in. Now, the word I just got, as far as Scott Pruitt is concerned, they're going to stick close to their original plan and come in on 207 or 208. That's next time around or thereafter.
Yeah, exactly. This is the 206th lap, still under caution. So Adrian has his fuel, and he'll rejoin the pack. There's still some dust on the course out there from the accident, so it's a little bit longer for the cleanup.
Fernandez had a weak early part of the season, but he has come on extremely strong in the last half dozen races with a couple of sixth places, a seventh and eighth, the 12th last week. He had trouble right at the end, but this man is very competitive at this point in the season.
All right, let's listen to Scott Pruitt and Jim McGee.
Get the fuel at 12 o'clock now, so when you leave, you're in good shape.
Keep hitting this lap then, right?
Lap, and then it's going to go green right after this lap, so you've got to get out and get to the end of the field. So put it at 12 o'clock, the fuel.
Remember that voice of Jim McGee. He masterminded.
You want to make sure you reset your meter. You got a clean pit in.
And there he goes, second card laid, Jack Arute, as Scott Pruitt comes in and Al Unser Jr. comes in right behind him. That's the rule. Follow the leader. Jack Arute?
Well, and they have run the string as far as they can, because we have gotten the signal, looks like one to go before we go back to green. Both cars getting service at this time. You can't ask for two better crews. Al is the first one down and out, but he is further back pit road, so it'll be a drag race to the end of pit road.
But Al beats him.
Now let's just see if they violated the speed limit. That's the big problem all the time, black flags.
Well, they've got a button on the steering wheel which can keep the speed down if they remember to push it.
I haven't heard them using it.
Let's listen.
Ready to go green. Get ready to go green.
Didn't mean to shush you there, Bobby.
That's all right. No, I was trying to listen to it too, Paul.
Flynn St. James.
Obviously, she's all right, and that's good news for us.
That voice of Jim McGee, remember, he monitored.
I used to listen to that a lot of times, Sam.
All right, 207 laps are complete. Green flag is already out. Jim McGee gives them the word. And back in the pack now is where that battle will develop.
Adrian Fernandez would be the leader right now.
No, don't think so.
I think he's in third on the same lap. He may be about to go down a lap.
It makes no difference now, because Little Al just gone by him, whether he was on the same lap or a lap down, but I do think he was a lap down with you, Paul.
Al Unser Jr. tries to pull away from Scott Pruitt. Battle in the closing laps of the Michigan 500. Adrian drifts up. Scott comes down. They almost get together.
Not only going to be a contest of speed, but a contest between the Ford and the Mercedes. Not only in speed, but the mileage. It's going to be close for both of them, is my guess.
It's going to be incredibly close. They stopped 6 laps ago. The 203rd lap.
All green laps. We think that they'll go about 40 to 42 laps.
Well, you want to do that math, it doesn't sound like they're going to make it.
Well, they might. They had a little bit of yellow there, Paul, and they're going to run them lean. And they're probably going to run them in high gears. Both of them are in the same problems.
Well, wait a minute. You run an engine lean in temperatures. One of the pits was reporting 102 degrees down there. You lean the engine down, and now what's going to happen?
Well, it might blow it, but these guys gamble a lot. Remember, winning is the only thing that's important.
Remember,
side by side down the backstretch with Emerson Fittipaldi.
Remember Pruett's desperate bid at Indianapolis, the last laps. He ran into oil there, crashed. He was bitterly disappointed, in tears at the end of that. He has slumped a little bit since then. They'd had a great early part of the season. This is the best he has done for some time. This is the big one, and he could win it.
Well, I looked down, looked up, saw that Penske car there. Let's get an update on Danny Sullivan. Finally, here's Gary Gerould.
Well, we had a chance to talk with Paul Harkus, who works on the crew for Danny, who was over here at the safety center, very concerned. He's headed back to the pits now. He said Danny was complaining of pain in the foot, the knee, and the pelvis, and there are plans to air evacuate him to Foot Hospital, I believe, in nearby Jackson, Michigan. So they'll, of course, undergo observation and further testing and so forth. That's the information we have from Paul Harkus at this point with the team.
Well, we were worried about head damage. That's what worried us most. So, in a lot of ways, all of that kind of damage sounds better to us. Thank you, Gary.
Well, and let's emphasize that that's Paul Harkus's description. We still don't have a medical description from IndyCar. 38 laps to go.
Danny had been contemplating retirement of a sort, so this comes at a very tough time decision-making wise for him.
Emerson Fittipaldi held Pruett up there a little bit. And for one lap, he came around 0.6 behind and then 67/100ths behind. So he dropped back just a little bit.
Little teamwork, maybe.
I think Emma would naturally try to help his teammate as much as he could. But this racetrack, being newly paved again, the grooves are all over the place. So there's ample place to pass here no matter where you are on the track.
Pruett 1.5 seconds back. Pruett, of course, has never won an IndyCar race. Al Unser Jr. has won 28, including races here.
Let's also keep in mind that if either one of these two drivers, Lyle's in the front, Pruett's right behind him, both look like kind of wide on the screen there. Both of them, if they really, really, really run them hard, stand a good chance of breaking between now and the end.
Good set of corners for Pruett. He closes in.
He's 1.1 back now. Good situation with Goodyear's incredible win streak, over 300 races consecutively on the line. Obviously right now as Pruett pursues in his Firestone shot car. That's on the line.
All right, here's what we have from IndyCar thus far on Danny Sullivan. He has injuries. They're not defined, but he is conscious. That's all we have on Danny Sullivan from IndyCar officials at this moment. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, here's the story on Scott Pruett. They are going to have to conserve fuel and conserve it in a big way. The telemetry and the hand figuring have given them the following. They need to average 2.147 miles per gallon in order to go the 250-lap distance here without coming into the pits again.
Well, Jack, he's trying to position himself to pick up a draft, that's for sure.
He's got a draft. He's had a draft since they threw the green.
Yeah, but is that another way to save mileage?
It is. In fact, that's what I was trying to interrupt you to tell you. Scott's gaining on this. I would disagree with Penske's and Little Al's theory. Little Al should be trying to run back and get the advantage of the draft helping the fuel mileage. What happens if you get a good enough draft, you can put it into the overdrive gear and go as fast as you would in your racing gear?
Yeah, I think Pruett used a little of his fuel to close up enough so that he could use the draft. Don't you, Bobby? Good tactic.
He's got a good draft right now.
That's a beauty right
Little
there.
Al on the other side of the coin is cutting clean air all the way. He's having to run more power or more throttle to run the same speed.
What would you do if you were sitting in Little Al's car? Would you back out and let Pruitt around you?
No, I wouldn't back out now. They should have done that before. There's no time to be jockeying back and forth and make gains. The gain or the decision had to have been made when it went from yellow to green. Remember, this is the last segment to the end of this race.
And remember, too, they have a huge lead over the third-place car of Adrian Fernandez. He's back in third, fully a lap and change back. This is a two-way race.
And fuel is very definitely going to determine it. But if fuel is a problem for both of them, boy, that throws the door open. Benny Parsons was up here yesterday to cover some racing with us, the International Race of Champions. Said he was going to watch this from the couch today, and what he may be seeing is that good old NASCAR tactic at the finish, where Scott Pruitt just kind of hangs in there, and tries to run down one side or the other at the finish. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Well, let's get the story now on Team Penske and their strategy. We can't get a definitive number like we got from the Patrick team, as we see a picture now of Danny Sullivan going by helicopter to Foot Hospital in Jackson, Michigan. They'll take him in for further observation, as we indicated. Now, with Roger Penske in the camp down here, they say, yes, it is going to be tight on fuel, but the radio we're monitoring indicates to Junior that fuel is okay. It may be a bigger concern is the wear that we talked about earlier on the tires. Remember, Firestone right front, Goodyear right rear. Will that come into play? How much do you have to save those tires with now just under 30 laps to go?
And the leaders come up on Jack Villeneuve, who just moved into 12th position. That's worth 1 point. He needs more than one.
And believe it or not, Villeneuve was helping Little Al, not hurting him. He needs the tow that he can get. Now, another thing, keep in mind, so everybody should know, both of these cars, Little Al and Pruitt, both have telemetry. That means that they're on-car computer transmits to the pits. The engineers are sitting there figuring out their mileage every lap that they go around.
Scott Pruitt continues to chase down Al Unser Jr., and as you heard Bobby Unser point out, he is deliberately sitting back there, picking up the draft, trying to save his own fuel, so with about 5 laps to go, he can then start his run on Al Unser Jr. to try and take that victory. By staying back where he is right now, although it looks like he's going to try and make a run on him, he must have had word from his crew that they have fuel to go for it, because at this point you would expect him just to sit back there and try and get the aerodynamic flow of the draft and save on his fuel consumption. But, we heard Paul Page point out that Benny Parsons will be watching this one from the couch. Well, you can bet Robbie Gordon is watching this one from the couch too. And Robbie Gordon at this point would be cheering on Al Unser Jr. because he trails Scott Pruitt in the points championship. And of course he's hoping that Villeneuve stays right where he is and only 12th and just picks up that 1 point. We now have 226 laps complete of the 250. Back now to Paul Page.
Nothing has changed at the Michigan 500. Scott Pruitt remains on station behind Al Unser Jr. Best guess, Bobby and Sam, is that he wants to stay there. He wants to stay in the tow, and he'd like to save fuel by doing so. My question then becomes, as they begin to overhaul slower traffic ahead, that's DeFerrin and Fittipaldi. My question is there a concern on how much air ends up in the coolers of the second car, in this case Scott Pruitt's car, when you're in the draft like that? Do you have to get him out into clean air?
No, not really. What he's doing is really smart. When you've got that much distance behind, like Scott is from Little Al, you're picking up a fair good draft because they're running 250 miles an hour down the straightaways approximately. So he's getting a good draft but not hurting the radiator.
Identical speeds the last lap. Danny Sullivan is conscious, being transported to Foot Hospital and being checked for a possible fracture to the pelvis. He is alert, awake, and otherwise appears to be okay. And what about Lynn St. James, Gary Gerould?
Well, here she is, and I know disappointed, but we're happy you're healthy. Tell us what happened now. Just a case of an engine letting go?
No, I think actually a right front tire probably went. I don't know for sure, but I called in and said I had corner entry push for the first time. I hadn't had that. I'd had corner exit and apex push, but that was the first time I had an indication of that. And the tire held going into the corner, but then it just let go. I mean, something let go because all of a sudden the car just was a missile. And unfortunately, I had a long time to have to wait and see him pull Danny out, but I think he's going to be okay. And it's just another disappointing. You know, we were really running well. The car was coming. The race was coming to us. We were getting better with the setup on the car, and I was learning a lot. And hoping to have a good finish.
Scott Pruitt makes a move now as Al Unser Jr. runs slow and appears to slow and heads for the pits. Tactics, is that what we're looking at?
Little Al, no tactics there. Little Al has a problem. Very definitely has a problem.
So the Penske team goes to work on the car. Look at the right rear. Look at that. Blisters on the right rear. Scott Pruitt takes the lead of the race. 230 laps complete. 20 to go. Al Unser Jr. back into the fight.
And still in second place with Fernandez still third, I assume.
So now what does Jim McGee tell Scott Pruitt? Lean that thing out or go ahead and richen it up?
No, he's going to...
Sorry, Bobby.
He's definitely got to tell him to go easy now. Not stop, but just go easy. He has no competition left. Adrian Fernandez is...
Hey, we'll find out. We'll find out. Jim McGee, what do you tell Scott Pruitt now?
Bring it home.
Got your answer for you guys.
Oh, yeah, that was a clarifying answer.
Yeah, really, I know a lot more now.
Bring it home means be careful. Don't make any stupid mistakes now.
Remember, Jim McGee was Nigel Mansell's crew chief in that great year Nigel had when he won the championship coming right off his world championship. And so he is the voice of experience in this kind of stuff. And I'm sure when Scott Pruitt hears a word from Jim McGee, he listens.
Scott's got the responsibility of really using his head. They won't run the engine lean. Won't take any chance he doesn't have to because he really doesn't have any problems as far as competition right now.
Right now he has a full 30-second lead over second place Al Unser Jr. But remember how fast that happened to Al Unser Jr. Could the same happen here, Gary?
Well, here's a visual look. If we can get the shot, the tires are being wheeled back, and you can clearly see that strip of blisters from the rear tire. That's been the concern today. Right front Firestone, right rear, or Goodyear. They've been adjusting air pressures, and somehow this set did not come up to function under that setup, and great disappointment, obviously, for Junior.
And there's just the kind of thing that Scott Pruitt's going to have to be careful of. Christian Fittipaldi coming up on the inside as Scott overhauled Stefan Johansson.
You know, Scott can, if he blistered that right front that you see right now in his car, he could live with that a whole lot easier than little Al could live with the right rear being blistered. If your rear is being blistered, that means that it's loose. That means he had a loose rear end. That's the one part that you can't live with.
Make no mistake, this is the high point of Scott Pruitt's whole career, a difficult career at best. Badly injured back in 1990, fought back from that, finally made his way back into IndyCars, but had a bad couple of years. Then this opportunity opened up. Began the season so successfully, then mid-season frustration. This could put all that behind him. This is the greatest moment so far of his career if he can keep it together.
Nobody else in contact, no other battles on the race course. Christian Fittipaldi running down there low behind Scott is in 10th place. 25-second lead over second place Al Unser Jr.
See, he could sacrifice a lot of time. There's only 15 laps to go. He could almost sacrifice 2 seconds a lap and still make it. So he's definitely going to be in the highest gear. Look at Fittipaldi coming by Christian. Now you know darn good well he's not trying very hard.
Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, one of the great things when you're at the controls of a race car, you've got a lot to concentrate on. But these guys here, their work is done. Right now, butterflies have become bullets in their bellies because they can't do anything to win or lose this race right now. It's all up to their driver, Scott Pruitt. And many of the crewmen on Pat Patrick's team are very much alone with their thoughts right now.
Nice and easy, Scott. Nice and easy. We're in good shape. Take it nice and easy.
There's another unseen team that's sitting there tensely, which is the Firestone team, waiting to break that long Goodyear streak should Pruitt manage to bring this one home.
Yellow, yellow,
yellow. Yellow. Car into the wall and into the wall big time. Zampedri. And DeFerrin locks him up to get past it, but Zampedri throws the steering wheel out, so apparently he's okay. The question now is going to be, how long will it take to make repairs? And what it does do is closes up the 23-second gap between Scott Pruitt and Al Unser Jr.
Fuel ceases to be an issue.
Now this is going to raise the price of poker.
Trying to listen to the two-way radios.
This is going to be a shootout. Now, when it does go green, if they get this cleaned up, which they'll try very hard in the 12 laps that are in.
You can probably get a good idea. It didn't look like I ran through anything. I went right down to the inside of the track, got her low, and it looks pretty good.
You know, this time by, it's going to be about 11 laps to go. Junior's going to come around, so he's going to be in the back of the field. But we're in pretty good shape here.
So, while the caution is out, we'll leave for just a moment, and we'll be back. Back at the Michigan 500, under this caution for Alessandro Zampedri. They have a lot of debris up on the racetrack. Gilda Farron is into the pits. Christian Fittipaldi came in with a shredded right rear, may have run over some debris there. There is Scott Pruitt. Now 1, 2, count the cars back to Allenser Jr. 3
was of course Bill now.
4, 5. Look at the distance. 6. That's Emerson. 7. Well, now 6, and they're not yet. So that of course is Teo.
Yeah.
So Allenser Jr.
Eight cars between them.
We're looking for him. There he is. There he is.
Yeah. But we know that could be made up in a moment if he gets a break.
Let's go to the pits. Begin with Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, in the leaders' pits, here's the wisdom that they're passing on to us. As soon as they heard that Al Jr. had gone out of the race, what they did is they radioed into Scott Pruitt, go to 6th gear. That's that overdrive gear, Bobby, that you've been talking about all day. Now they feel they've got plenty of fuel to go the distance, and if they have to, they can run their full speed gear for the remainder of this race when it goes back to green. What about at your end, Gare?
Well, Jack, in this situation here, the big discussion as the yellow came out, they were trying to make a decision as to whether or not Junior was going to come in and get a different set of tires and that they would tinker with the air pressure a little bit to impact the handling characteristics of the car. Of course, the great disappointment of that blistered right rear cost them the position on the racetrack. They made the decision and changed their mind, changed it again. They finally elected to keep him out, and as you gentlemen counted, 8 spots between where Junior is and the leader, Scott Pruitt. Awful lot to make up in very little time.
Well, let's give you a full field rundown. 10 laps to go. The leader is Scott Pruitt under the yellow. One of the things that is also interesting to me as we look at that full field rundown, Bobby, is that we know that...
Try and get him cleaned up and give us another reading. You know, lay back from the pace car a little bit.
We know that from the Penske team, Rick Mears and Clive Hall have been watching from up on top of the grandstand, so they can tell Little Al what lies ahead. I don't think Scott Pruitt has a spotter up here.
Well, it really isn't going to affect or help anything right now. Having a spotter up there is always nice. There's the little stand that the spotter is at, which is right alongside of us up here, best seats in the house. But it won't make any difference now. Little Al, unfortunately, has 8 guys to go by. He'll probably get by those 8 guys with Adrian Fernandez in the pits getting tires, probably had a puncture. Get Rick Gallus's car. But it won't make any difference because he just doesn't have enough time unless Scott misses a gear shift, has a flat tire. That's what everybody's worried about right now. It's like Adrian. He might have had a puncture there. They're all worried about going through the wrecks because the carbon fiber, which is the body, is just like glass that cuts tires.
All right, let's pay attention again to Scott Pruitt and his two-way communications.
He's just working his car back and forth now, feeling to make sure he doesn't have a tire going down. See, the driver can't see the rear tires. He can see them in his mirror, but they don't look like much. So he's feeling it right now to make sure he doesn't have a slow leaker like a little pinhole.
Let's go to Jack.
Well, you don't think Team Penske's feeling the heat? You see the crew member walking away down here, all the way down, did a sprint all the way up towards the front of the field to the cars that are between Al Unser Jr. and Scott Pruitt, and began to lobby, and we don't know whether effectively or not, if they would move over and let Al Jr. go to the front and try and race for the lead. Don't know how the lobbying turned out.
Yeah, you figure you have to take a chance, though. You have to try and argue it.
Yes, that's for sure. You know, there's plenty of room to pass it, like as we've said all day. The problem is he needs a certain groove to attain the speed he needs to catch Scott.
Notice how calm Pruett sounds calm, almost laconic to me in view of the few moments that separate him from the high point, the culmination of his racing career.
The big worry right now, the way I see it, is going to be whether or not either one of them, or either one of the three, including Adrian Fernandez and the Gallus car that's running third, we got to keep track of him too. But if these guys have a flat or miss a gear shift, do something like that we would call stupid at the start, that would be bad.
But it could happen easily. If Pruett, Bobby, you're so right, missed a gear shift on the restart, which I doubt he'll do, he could suddenly find himself in mid-pack.
You can hear how cool he is, though. This Pruett doesn't get rattled. He came up through go-kart racing. This guy's been around a long time.
He's the defending Trans Am champion. In his year off from IndyCar racing, he just went and won the Trans Am.
Probably 3 more laps of yellow, Jack Arud.
Paul, we're talking about where the spotters are. You talked about Clive Hall and Rick Mears being up in the best seat in the house. Found out where Scott Pruett's spotters are. See, way up there at the end of the grandstands, they say 5 rows down. They bought a ticket.
Their car owner doesn't own the speedway.
Car can't stop him from doing that, that's for sure.
Let's go to Gary.
Well, as the countdown continues, looking for green, one of the busiest guys from the Penske camp is Peter Twitty, who's running from team to team trying to find out whether or not they can get cooperation so Junior can pick up some ground. And among those that they're lobbying, teammate Emerson Fittipaldi. And I mean, Twitty has just been back and forth, and then back and forth again.
We know that Twitty could be a heck of a salesman now, don't we?
I said, have you had any luck? And he says, I've got lots of luck. Right now he's talking to Chuck Sprague, who's on the radio with Emerson's team.
Still pretty dirty up there in turn 4. Quite a bit to clean up.
Well, the teams, I think all of them were relieved to see that Penske was not the dominant force this year that he had been in the last few years. It's really broken this season open, made it the best season for IndyCar racing in a long time. But they want everybody to have a fair shake. And when you know a man wants to work his way through the pack, you at least want to know he's there and see if you can give him a chance.
Al Unser Jr. pulls up, wants to make sure Teo Fabi knows exactly what he intends when they go to the restart. They're still trying to get a cleanup there. They've picked up all the little pieces, and believe me, there were a bunch.
And they have to clean it up. They have to be fair to everybody. That would be an unsafe circumstance to start it now.
Like a lot of those guys are just going to let them go on the restart, so we're going to have to be on our toes.
Boy, yeah, that's the news, all right.
That's Jim
McGee.
Pruett. It's serious back there. Pete Twitty's been out selling.
And McGee knows it. That's the point.
Yeah, but now does McGee send somebody down the pits?
To lobby the other way?
No,
and he doesn't have the chip either. But here's McGee, because there's a Firestone Goodyear chip here, too. And
remember, McGee used to run Penske Racing. He used to be the general manager over there.
McGee is probably looking at the face of the most experienced crew chief in this business, wouldn't you say, Bobby?
Well, when you combine the teams up, what incredible experience. Patrick Racing, Penske Racing.
He's the modern-day George Bignotti. There's no question about that. Jim McGee is the most experienced of anybody here.
We've jumped back about 5 years in time, 5 or 6 years in time.
Let's look up.
It's going to be green next time by. You can go to 12 o'clock now in 5th gear.
Yep, there's the finger. 1 more lap to go.
5th gear, so they'll go green. That's the go gear, 5th is.
And I think
it is only 1, 2, 3.
And I think we can assume the 12 setting is the maximum power setting as well. Whatever the signals may be, we now know that.
Sam, did you hear him say he's on your button and go, shoo?
Yeah.
Full rich. All the power you can use. 6 laps to go, Gary Gerald.
5 laps to go.
Very critical it's going to be the start. How much of a jump that Pruett gets.
Gary?
The lobbying paid off because Emerson Fittipaldi just came in and got a splash of fuel. That means, of course, that his teammate Al Unser Jr. moves up at least 1 spot. That closes the gap. 5 to go.
There he is on the left of the screen. That's how close they are. They are real close.
So we're going to have a sprint to the finish. Of course, we're running close to our time limit here. We're going to get the end of the race for you. Don't worry about that. What we may miss is an interview with Scott Pruett on his first IndyCar win.
He has taken that big jump. I knew he'd have to. And he gets the green.
All right.
That's decisive.
The game is Al Unser Jr. He runs high. Christian Fittipaldi overhauls Teo Fabi low. Little Al stays high. So that's one car.
There's Rahal right in front of Little Al.
Got a signal from Rahal, come to my inside.
Scott's still a long ways in front.
2.5 seconds.
That was the last cross of the line. We'll find them now.
That draft right there is really helping Little Al. It's not hurting him right there.
Getting behind you now. The next car behind you.
And now he is. Let Jim McGee do the play-by-play.
But in fact, Little Al may have enjoyed an advantage slipstreaming or drafting the other cars that he won't have now.
Gonna be difficult.
Last lap Pruitt, 229 miles an hour. Last lap Unser Jr., 228.4.
Gap down to half a second.
Al's got a big draft now. He's got a really good one.
Pruitt is a very defensive driver.
Little Al tries to the outside as the white flag comes out. Side by side through the first turn. Little Al takes the advantage running high and comes into the lead. Less than 2 miles to go now in this 500-mile run, and Al Unser Jr. picks the lead up again. But what about Scott? He's going to chase Al everywhere he can.
He's got the draft now.
Well, Scott Pruitt may have the advantage coming to the final turns. Did he move too quick? Did he move too soon?
He's still got
continue side by side. Al Unser Jr. and Scott Pruitt come to the line, and Pruitt's got him. Scott Pruitt takes the win.
One of the best races I've seen.
Scott Pruitt scores his first IndyCar win, the 36th for his owner, Pat Patrick, and the 3rd Michigan 500 win.
Fabulous race.
So there it is. There was the finish of the race. Scott Pruitt timed it absolutely perfect. For a moment, I thought he'd gone just a little bit too early, but not so. Perfect timing. And Scott Pruitt takes the win by inches here in the Michigan 500. Here's Jack Arute.
Well, Jim McGee trying to make his way over to victory lane, and he is so excited. Jim, congratulations.
Oh, thanks a lot. That was a great race. I mean, Scott's... he's got a lot of spunk, and after all he's been through in his racing career, it's absolutely incredible. I'm so proud and happy for him, and he's a true champ.
Let's go back up to you.
So Scott Pruitt, Scooter, has taken his first win in the Michigan 500. We'll see you next Saturday at the Brickyard 400.
Unbelievable victory for Scott Pruitt, his first ever in the IndyCar Series. I saw one of the most emotional wins back in 1992 after his big crash in 1990. He came back, he took the win at Daytona on the Super Speedway in the IROC race, and now he does it here at Michigan on the Super Speedway. An unbelievable move coming out of the last turn, getting by Al Unser Jr. to take his first ever IndyCar victory, and also the first win for Firestone Tires since 1974 when Al Unser did it right here at Michigan. Here are the unofficial results. Al Unser Jr. finishing second. Adrian Fernandez with his first ever podium finish in IndyCar. Fabi picks up 14 points. Emerson Fittipaldi picks up some. And Johansson, also in a Penske, rounds out the top 6. An absolute unbelievable finish. Here it is once again. IndyCar racing at its best. And you can watch round 14 in just 2 weeks from Mid-Ohio, permanent road course in Ohio. This is Guy Hobbs saying so long for everyone at ESPN.
Hey,